One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reason Reborn. We're back in 2021. Now, I'm here with my co-host Cardiac Sumo, who is, wearing his, Falcon shirt.
Wow.
I'm just saying, you're getting ready for, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I get it.
If I wasn't black, you wouldn't have said that shit. I'm just saying.
I mean,
if I was just a white guy, you would have just said Captain America and left it at that.
I would have probably said Black Captain America. So, but no, I only said Falcon because the show is coming. That's why. Because remember, Captain America is no longer around. Although rumor is fucking, what's his name's thinking about coming back. All of a sudden, you've turned green, sir. I don't know what happened.
Like my entire screen is just green?
Yeah, on my side, your camera's turned green. That's so weird.
It's odd. I still get a decent feed through.
Yeah. Must be something going on with this crazy Zoom, considering that the internet. Hold on.
Probably because we pointed out that we're black, so they were like, "Oh,
there it goes. It went away." That's the weirdest thing.
America is
Perhaps
back.
they wanted to remind us of She-Hulk coming. So
Marvel doesn't fuck around with their
had to give you,
advertising.
they were like, wait, here's the gamma ray green. Plug us now.
I mean, since you already got a shill for us, you may as well get through the whole catalog.
Exactly. All right, we get it. WandaVision is available now on Disney Plus. Please go subscribe. Now, can I get my check, Disney? Jeez. Anyway. All right, so we're back on the specific date for a couple of reasons. One, because I kind of put an audible to us, and me and him have discussed this, how after the election, we did shows, and we did the usual, like most podcasts do. We did shows until right before Christmas, and then took the holidays off. But as things started to ramp up towards the inauguration, things started to get a little crazy. And with all the talk, I guess we kind of decided maybe we should wait until he's in office, or at least a little late, especially after the insurrection. After that insurrection, I was like, I need the 21st to come and go first before I talk about anything, because I don't want to be sitting here and be like, it's getting close to the 21st. Things are normal, blah, blah, blah. No, things are not normal. Not at all. And then the last couple of days has kind of been delayed, mostly due to me, because, I had stuff. So, apologies for that.
Some of that to me. We had a deadline at work this week, so the last few days just trying to all of us banded together, working a lot to meet it. So
yeah,
it just turned out that the last few days of the week weren't great for me. In fact, I had to cancel other things because of that too. So, but to your point, you can't exactly predict chaos. Well, I guess during the last 4 years, you kind of could predict it every day, but we were kind of assuming there wouldn't be chaos anymore.
Yeah, but you know what they say, when you make an assumption, that I guess in some ways came to be true. So what's been going on since we have been gone? More madness than should have been. Especially being when we left right before Christmas, it was almost pushing towards 2 months since the election.
I don't remember the exact day the last one was.
So, I mean, but it had been a while because, November, the beginning of November, we stopped recording at the end of December. Yeah, almost 2 months. Like, if this were a normal society, it would have been pretty quiet leading up to the election. You would have got a lot of pardons, of course, and things like that. Maybe a couple of bills slipped through here and there. But no, you know, Donald Trump must maintain a media presence. So he has to do things the hard way. So let's see. Let's see if I can recount everything off the top of my head because it's been a lot. So you had the election. You had the counts that last forever. Till the end of the week when Biden was, called as the victor. Then that started the whole, you know, campaign. It started two campaigns. One, the campaign for the Senate seats for Georgia, which was a serious campaign that needed to be done. But then you had the unnecessary campaign by Trump and his supporters to have the election reversed with the continuing, challenges in court, challenge after challenge, which pretty much just about by the time that we start recording, all the challenges had dried up and failed. So you thinking, okay, he lost in court. All the votes have been, been certified by all the states. What next? We just need to have the, you know, congressional certification and for the electoral votes, and that's it. Easy peasy. This is something that goes on normal every year. Wrong. No, it's not normal. So we start getting closer and closer to these goddamn the electoral college vote, and it's just more people coming in with the no. We're gonna protest it. You got Ted Cruz, this dumb fuck ass. How is that guy a lawyer? Seriously, I thought like Giuliani, was bad enough. How is fucking Ted Cruz a lawyer, dude?
Well, how was Ben Carson a brain surgeon, right? Like,
Well,
having
touche.
elite work does not necessarily make you the most intelligent. Although in cases of people like Cruz, I don't know how dumb he really is. I think he's just hyper cynical and willing to ignore reality to get political gain, which is arguably worse than just being dumb.
Yeah, because you're just being willingly ignorant at that point.
There's plenty of people in that party that know better than that and still continue to do it just because.
Yeah. But yeah, he's one of the people, along with the newcomer Harley, and then of course QAnon lady Marjorie Green, who just got elected in Georgia. God damn it! The one bad thing to slip through in Georgia this year, but or last year, I should say. And just all sorts of crazy people stepping up saying like, no, we're not going to vote for certification. We're going to vote to have the electoral votes changed and all that. And you got Trump just continually tweeting all types of stuff, misleading things, rallying QAnon, Proud Boys, all of the radical right groups that are just like pretty much just a bunch of racists and white supremacists, getting them feeded. They started promoting January 6th, the day where the electoral votes were supposed to go, as a day of protest and all this. And finally, we get to January 6th. Trump comes out right before they started doing the vote, and he gives this rousing, speech telling people to march on the Capitol. And that led to probably one of the worst days in American history, where hundreds of people who were protesting it's hard to say because it makes no fucking sense. People who said they were there to protest Donald Trump not being elected president and trying to quote unquote stop the steal decided to fucking bum rush the U.S. Capitol, assault U.S. Capitol police officers, and run like rampant through the U.S. Capitol, destroying property, stealing property. Some coming with the intention of harming people in Congress, including Mike Pence, because Mike Pence decided that
Seen as a traitor.
he was going to actually do his job and follow the law and preside over it. And he was like, yeah, no, this is the election's over. Donald Trump lost. We got to, one of the few sensible things he's done in his time. He decided, yeah, no, we are going to go ahead and proceed like we're supposed to, because that's the way the law works. That's the way government works. So they were going to like kidnap and hang him, which is wild. Fucking
I just
wild.
want to point out, in case anybody thinks that's an exaggeration, there were chants of, quote, hang Mike Pence.
Yeah.
I feel weird even saying that, but that was a thing that happened. So presumably, at least some people there had that intent.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen images of people who had zip ties and all types of other stuff. There were some people who were armed that came there. It had been found like on Twitter and everything that people had talked about the idea of doing things like grabbing Nancy Pelosi and taking her hostage and stuff. Other people, key members of Congress who they had issue with. It was crazy. A Capitol police officer was hit and died after being hit in the head with a fire hydrant. A couple of other got beat.
Fire extinguisher.
Yeah. A couple of the insurrectionists died, including a former Air Force member who was shot and killed. Although I have to say, it's sad to say this is funny, but there was a story that one of the people who died was trying to climb into the Capitol and had a taser in his waist, and apparently people said that it shocked him in the dick and that caused a heart attack. I shouldn't laugh, but if that's a true story, goddamn, that's a fucked up way to go. I don't know. Has it been confirmed that?
I don't. I've seen the same story, but I don't know. I feel like the thing that makes me question it is I feel like I haven't heard anybody really on the news talk about it. So I'm like, it feels like the kind of story you would point out is kind of odd.
Well, I guess play devil's advocate. It's kind of fair not to talk about it, because why do you need to give that person airtime? He's an insurrectionist. If he's not being, you know what I mean? So yeah, no. And I keep saying insurrectionists because that's what they are. There's, people say the protesters broke it. They weren't there to protest. It is clear 100% that it had nothing to do with actually voicing your opinion and wanting your opinion be heard. They went there to tear shit up and to force the government into ceding to their will. It was an insurrection. They were willing to physically harm people and take, violent action to do so. Sorry. They're traitors. They should be all fucking in jail. And any of them who has not been able to be identified should count themselves lucky, because anybody who has been identified should be arrested. And in a lot of cases, I believe they said over 200 people so far have been arrested.
Maybe last time I heard the number, it was like around 80 or something, and that was a while back. So given the pace they've been going, that kind of makes sense to me. But I heard that.
But yeah, the FBI sent out the message: if you can identify these people, please contact them, let them know. So still, if you recognize anybody and you feel like they haven't been caught yet, please contact the FBI, let them know who the person is so that they can go and arrest them and charge them properly for insurrection or whatever the charge is called. Assault is, of course, one because they assaulted, police. They were a part of that. They're accomplices to that, even if they didn't directly assault them. They broke into federal property, so I'm sure there's some charge for that. They damaged federal property, so I'm sure there's a charge for that. Attempted assault, at least, on members of Congress. They should have like a shit ton of charges staring them in the face.
So I think it's good that you went. I know you were covering mostly just the timeline up since we essentially did the last podcast, but I think it's important to go through all that to show that, this wasn't just something that randomly happened. Trump and many top level Republicans like Cruz, Josh Hawley becoming more of a no name because of this sort of thing. A lot of them contributing to stirring up the base, sowing doubt in their base, telling them, the election was stolen, we're going to fight it. Pence is going to fight it with us. And the fact that he didn't is what made him a traitor to them in the first place. So they've been soaking this up for a long time. And even, those last few months, couple months aside, this sort of conspiracy thinking in this country, and in particular in the political right, has been brewing more and more for years and years. That's why you get people believing in stuff like Pizzagate, right? So it all culminated in what we saw at the Capitol, but it certainly didn't just happen out of thin air, I guess is the point, and why I'm saying it's good that you covered a bit of the timeline up to all that. I think it's important to notice that people like Marjorie, forgot her middle name, Marjorie Green, I guess. People like her who are, known QAnon people are now in positions of political power. What is the phrase? The inmates running the asylum.
Yeah.
I've said for a long time that, the Republican Party is kind of letting what would have otherwise been considered more fringe elements become more and more mainstream. And that when you see people like her and people like Josh and how Ted Cruz behave, all of them come together and behave the way they behave, that is the result of that. That's the result of crazy ideas becoming mainstream and now fracturing your party because some of you guys want to pretend like you're professionals, but you have this very outright crazy political element to you that you can't really handle, right? I think back when Trump was first elected, I was like, y'all are trying to ride this crazy man's momentum to get, judges confirmed that you want, to try to get certain bills passed that you want. And I know you think this is advantageous right now, but is it not going to be good for you in the long term?
No, not at all.
You're adding too much crazy sauce onto the food here, man. It's going to create problems for you. And it has.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, now you have these people who, did this, calling themselves patriots. By the way, patriots don't carry, as my best friend said to me today, patriots don't walk around with the Confederate flags. That's not an American patriot. That's a traitor. The Confederacy were people who betrayed America and succeeded. And they tried to, overthrow America, basically, with the Civil War.
So, if we get back to the Capitol, I think one of the things to note about all of that, and I've heard a few people talking about this. I mean, you talk about all these different charges. Part of the reason there's so many, and I remember an FBI official pointing this out on the news, is that there's so many varying intents there. Like there were some people who just wanted to come there and be regular and protest. Some people just got watching. Some people who went there, like you mentioned, the guy with the zip ties. I don't know if you've seen that footage of when they're on the floor and there's like a couple people like sitting on the furniture and there's that one dude like, come on guys, can't be disrespectful. We can't do that. Which to me sounded like madness. Like just because you're not as much of a psycho as this asshole doesn't mean that you're like a good person. You broke into here too. But you had all these sort of varying viewpoints, intent. Somebody pointed out that, you have QAnon conspiracy believers. You have the Proud Boys. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of one of these groups, but you have like several groups that kind of intermingle and all have representation there. I should look it up in a bit. There's like one group whose name Boogaloo Boys, I think it is.
Yeah, that's one of them. I was trying to figure out the other one because the Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, and it's another one, but I cannot remember their name.
And of course, to your point with the Confederate flag, there's just good old fashioned, that general group of people. So what I saw is, or what you see, I think, is a combining of like a bunch of bad socio-political ideas and conspiracies and all this shit sort of melding together and charging the Capitol as one. And, even though you don't see, I was pointing out that guy telling the other guy to get out of the chair, you don't see full cohesiveness. It all still results in very similar, crazy, destructive behavior. And that makes it one of the weirder things to follow, right? Because if you look at other terrorist groups, and I guess I'm counting them as a terrorist group in this context, I wouldn't say that they're just quite so, what's the word? That they're all just so unified like that. Other terrorist networks will kind of diverge too. But this is just like this weird melding of nonsense in this country just coming more and more together. I think that's because of social media and the way it combines these people. I was listening to an FBI agent talk about how, I think on sites like Parler, you have some people kind of recruiting into other spaces and kind of drawing, from each other. So it's a very odd phenomena to witness today.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird why, because so the reason why we're recording now, by the way, is because I got delayed. I was going to ask you much earlier, but my best friend wanted to come and we were talking about this whole thing. And we were discussing how crazy it is that this stuff is happening because, in my opinion, a lot of it has to do with, forgive me for saying it this way, but it's just true. It's white Americans' inability to cope and deal with things that they've never had to cope and deal with before. Like I was saying, we were talking about this, and we were talking about how, like, the people for Trump, part of their whole issue is that they can't believe that the world is kind of rebelling against the way that they feel, and they're not able to cope with that. Like, things are changing. The world's not the same as it was, many years ago. It's shit. The world's not the same that it was 10 years ago, 20 years, not that long ago. And it's kind of a hard thing to deal with because other races have had to exist in this country, having to deal with a lot of major things. And now that we're starting to see a turn in people's, the way that they look at the world, that the fact that a lot of people are more into the idea of a more unified and equal world. Well, if you're like someone who's racist or you're a white supremacist, as my best friend said, equality is oppression to you because you don't want equality. You want to be at the top of the food chain and dictate down. Being on the level with everybody else is horrible. And Biden being election is a symbol of like, oh shit, there's going to be equality. Hell, Kamala being fucking vice president is another sign. Obama was the biggest one that started the whole chain reaction, but now you're starting to see like people are very quick to like lash back out when you get a Trump who wants to push the old agenda, and everybody's like, well, no, fuck that shit. That's not what we want. So it's like the dealing and coping with the whole situation is very, very hard for them because for centuries in this country, it's always been a hierarchy that was dictated by them. And we're kind of in the death throes of that way of doing things. And it's hard. It's really hard for them. Because when you look at it, like he was saying, like maybe they're going to try to do something else, but it's like, I don't think so, because like it's not like something that I don't think they really want, like the violence and stuff like that. They don't want to like fight like that. It's not conducive to them. It's going to cost them more than it's going to gain them. They just, right now we're at a period where we're seeing people who just don't know exactly how to. That's why you're getting this whole the election's rigged and all that. It's like, you've lost elections before. What's so different about this one? The signs that the world is changing to a more equitable place for everybody is scary. It's frightening for them for some reason, to the point where, again, as my best friend said, they're kind of lashing out. It's like being a spoiled kid who's never been told no. And now you're being told no. So you lash out because you don't know. No. What do you mean no? You know what I mean? You've never been denied, or you've never had to like share. You've always been the spoiled brat who got what you want. Now you have to share, and you can't do what you want. It's hard. It's very, very hard for a lot of people, at least mentally speaking.
So, first I'd like to just make the point of distinguishing the changes we're talking about, because I think a lot of people tend to, maybe fairly want to talk about certain economic changes that, will strike different communities. So, for example, with automation, you have a certain loss of certain kind of jobs. So there's plenty of people, like white people, working class white people, who are put out by that sort of thing throughout the Midwest and whatnot. Fair enough to talk about, but I do think that is a separate thing from the more cultural, social cultural changes you're talking about. So I do kind of want people to kind of draw more of a line between those two things, because one, it's sort of a legitimate thing to worry about, and one, to your point, is sort of I'll just call it racist, because I don't want to have a deep conversation on what to think of that as. But to the point about, these people having to get used to this, to draw back to the point I was making about the diverse group of maniacs at the Capitol. I don't know quite how far to apply what you were just saying to these people, because I was listening to he was like some sort of law enforcement. No, I'm sorry. He was like one of these people that believed in all that shit. You know what I mean? Like one of these conspiracy thinker people. He was being, I guess he finally like snapped out of it and got out of all this shit. He was kind of being asked like, what kind of things made you finally realize this is bullshit, right? And apparently in like one of these sites, there was some sort of call to Trump to like use a particular phrase. It's like assigned to them. And Trump used the phrase, I guess. And he was pointing out, like, oh shit, that's the sign. That's it. Blah, blah, blah. And then eventually he kind of realized that actually, no, that's just a phrase that Trump says. Somebody on this site must have picked up on that and kind of like I can't remember what the phrase was, but kind of like used it and be like, all right, if Trump wants us to do some shit, he'll give us a sign with this phrase that he already uses all the time. And I was listening to this guy talk, he doesn't seem to believe anymore, but I was listening to him like suddenly realizing just the level of craziness that comes with believing in conspiracies like this. So, when you talk about like what's different, having to let go of a sense of power, maybe, but there is a serious issue with being completely detached from reality in a way that, as much as I talk about it, I think I'm still coming to grips with just how fucking far and elaborate some of these conspiracy theories are and what kind of mind state it takes to believe in some of this shit. So I do think, and it's kind of hard for me to say it because I'm in technology, but I do think some of the social media issues we have, some of these apparently crazy pockets of the internet that I've never been into, but now I'm starting to hear a bit about like what goes on in there, is a major contributing factor to what's radicalizing so many of these people. Because you listen to them talk, like some of them are real. And I talked about Cruz, probably knowing better. Some of these motherfuckers really believe for real. You listen to the people at the Capitol, they're like, what are we supposed to do? Like very emotional. Like they actually believe that there was some large scale conspiracy to steal the election from Trump. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think that's part of what I'm getting at, because, and this happens to it can happen to a lot of people. Let's talk about like how it happens in Black communities. Like when you're a marginalized person who continually like see, things push, when you continue get pushed down, you're a lot more inclined to believe in in certain things that people say, like, oh, the system's designed to do that, which in some ways it is exactly true. But there may be a case in where it's not a case of the system, but you're going to believe it anyway, no matter what happens. No matter what happens in your life, if it fails, it's all the system, whether it's true or not. And I think that's the thing with a lot of them. Whether it's true or not, they're believing that, they're quick to believe in everything. And I think they're a lot quicker to believe in everything because, again, this is new to them. Like, I'm not going to say that there is no systematic obstacles for minorities and Black people in particular, but I'm also not going to say that every shortcoming that happens in my life is completely due to it. When you've never had any type of strife, I think it's hard to make that distinction, because this has never happened to me. And I think a lot of them have built up like this whole issue in their head. And I think it is a part of like some type of mental issue too. But I think when you're so used to not having to deal with consequences or deal with, being who you are, like, let's be honest, in this country, racists have generally not have to deal with the consequences of being a fucking racist or being a sexist. You know what I mean? It's like for most of their time, guys can do and say whatever they wanted to women. Now all of a sudden you're in an era where people are like, no, you can't do that. And you're getting a lot of people who are more used to being able to get away with what the fuck they want, like screaming at the top of their lungs. It's the same thing with this whole thing with the like Trump supporters. Like, as time has gone on, like, you've not being able to get away with it. I mean, think about it. Why do people who love guns always scream that you're hollering, trying to take away the Second Amendment. It makes no sense because nobody's trying to take away the Second Amendment. We just want better gun laws. But until recently, people didn't push as hard to make it harder for anybody to get a gun. So it's like, wait. You want rules now? What the fuck? So you have to find some way to, I guess, cope or compensate or to justify your resistance to it. So you start to develop these crazy things. And yeah, you're going to get people who truly believe it because you cultivate enough of a like groundswell behind a certain theory or something. You're going to get people who are like going to be so easily bought in to that because, like I said, in some aspects, they felt like something has always held them back and they key onto that thing as this is the reason, or like something's always like, caused something to happen to me. This is the reason. So, and with social media, it's a lot more easier for people to get together and to, find a place where they're like, oh, here's more people like me who feel exactly like me. And I can express myself more freely because, there weren't those many outlets that you could do in a public, or you could feel like you can do a little bit more public until the internet and social media. So I think that's kind of what it is. It's like, yeah, part of it is like, it's just some people just making like that their reason to hide the fact that they know that like this shit is wrong, but they don't want to give it up. And some people, they are really bought into it because that's all they've ever known. It's hard. It's weird. It's just weird because like somebody like Mitch McConnell, he knows he's a fucking racist and like he's fucking wrong, but he won't admit it openly, and he'll find other way. He'll find a lot more smarter ways to manipulate it, like the whole, I don't know if we should be impeaching this guy. It's going to make us not have unity and all that. Like, come on, shut the fuck up. You really know that that's a...
You go back to the to the request to increase the stimulus checks. And it's like, we don't have to rush to give Democrats rich friends all this money. It's like,
right.
Yeah, like McConnell is an example of somebody who doesn't really believe in anything per se, but he could kind of take advantage of
exactly
these kind of beliefs for his own gain. It feels like a complicated intersection of a lot of problems. So I do think, you're getting some cultural backlash and resentment for some of the things changing. Yeah, you made the good example of the way we were forced to, come against the way women have been treated throughout history. I guess I was going to say in recent history, but like all of history. Things that were pretty normal only 10 years ago. Am I still connected? My video is...
You're connected. It's just their video's a little wonky. Maybe like, I don't know.
I'm black.
See, again, this is what we had to deal with, America. We can't even get decent internet connections to do a podcast. God damn it.
I'm hoping that kind of resolves itself somehow, but
it's probably just a little slow down. I mean, we're in the COVID age, sir. Everybody's on the fucking internet right now, so everything's a little bit slower than normal.
Is my audio at least coming through all right?
Yeah, your audio is coming through fine. It's just like the video's a little stuttery, but yeah, it's right, the COVID age.
I'll keep going, I guess. So, I mean, I guess you made the point about the women issue, and yeah, I think a lot of men in general are forced to kind of like look back and think about how they've spoken to women and shit. You think like, oh shit, that seemed kind of normal to me at the time, but that's kind of weird. And you have this sort of weird gut reaction to, all this insistence and forcing up against that issue. So it is a bit uncomfortable. there is going to be a lot of backlash toward this sort of thing, toward, quote unquote wokeism in general. And maybe some backlash here and there is warranted, but I don't know. So I do acknowledge that some of that is the cause. I guess I was just making the point that there are other issues exacerbating the issue. I think you asked the question, like, you've lost other elections before. And I only point to social media as like a new kind of a radicalizing thing because, for example, somebody was talking about how the algorithms work for these sorts of connections forming. And, the algorithm, an algorithm like on Facebook might notice that, if you believe and are following like this kind of conspiracy theory, you're probably the kind of person that might believe in this other one too. So it starts showing you this shit as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I talked about how these groups are starting to like intermingle, because I think partially because of the internet.
I mean, I think that's just a legacy thing with the internet, because I couldn't, God, let's show how old we are, Michael. I think back to like the AOL days when people used to create chat rooms. Like you could literally be suggested chat rooms that lean to like the type of chat rooms that you may have went to before. Or,
Sure.
It's so easy just to type in a word and it'll put you straight to the chat room that like you were looking for.
It's not a new issue.
Yeah.
I think the point I'm making is that the internet
I think it's a more prevalent issue, though. I don't,
right,
to your point, because we've come a long way with the internet, and sadly,
like back then, like you were probably already somewhat interested in technology if you were like getting into some of those early chat rooms than the regular person. You know what I mean? But nowadays, a lot of people are connected 24/7 through smartphones in their pockets.
Yeah, it's just normal. It's an accessory of life.
I think I noted a few podcasts back, like this weird sort of stress I was noticing being constantly connected to like Twitter on my phone and like being fed every negative fucking story like every couple of minutes that happened across the country. So I think it makes it, there's more people on the internet and they're able to connect much smoother. There's a lot less friction happening there. So you have, that cultural backlash, the way our modern technology is kind of adding to the issue. And I don't know how to say this other one, but maybe just education in general, because I remember feeling like this way, like I'd say as far back as high school, at least, where I started to notice that people, what was the phrase? Like everybody has an opinion. Like it felt like culturally we were just letting go of the idea that facts are a thing that matter. It's a little bit of religion, but I started noticing it like in socio-political issues where like, well, I believe in this, I believe in that, whatever, we can believe in different things. I'm like, sure, but some of the things you guys are saying are factually wrong, and you feel like you shouldn't be called out on that because it's your Democratic or Republican or libertarian opinion, you know what I mean? So
yeah, no, opinion is law on the internet. We all know that. Like, come on.
Opinion is what?
It's law.
I
don't
know if you've experienced this.
Because everybody always qualifies an opinion with what? Facts.
Like I noticed that people feel like they can just put any opinion out there and feel like they don't even have to try and like make an argument to justify the opinion. Like as though the idea, because sometimes it's not even really an opinion, but the idea that it's an opinion makes it somehow inoculated against any kind of argument, and for you to even address it is just rude.
Well, no, it's part of what I was saying, because it's like now with social media and stuff like that, these places like Parler and things like that, like certain Twitter groups and all that, everybody feels like I have a place where I can say and do what I want, because I found a place where I find a lot of people who feel the same way about this as me. So I'm going to just say whatever I want and do whatever, and it makes you a lot more bolder. And part of what we see now is with the public's eye reaction, such as what we've seen with the insurrection, is partially due because we have a president who felt the same way they did, and got on the internet and said whatever the fuck he wants because he got the power of people always agreeing with him. and he was someone who had actual power, using the power of people who agreed with his opinion on the internet and spreading that shit. Because hey, he's the president. If the president is saying it, clearly how we feel must be right, right? This ain't just your everyday, and that's the thing. Like with social media, you have so many people who have actual influence and power coming on and doing things. Like you are building even a more aggressive stance that is started to leak publicly, because if that guy says it and he's who he is, clearly that shit's real and it's right. So fuck all of y'all.
His behavior,
I'm right too,
is the perfect example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, where he can lie at the speed of light and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like with him, there wasn't even the pretense that truth mattered.
Yeah.
It was all just some sort of weird mental game of how much bullshit you can spew. And to a lot of his followers, like some of them admittedly knew he was lying and didn't care and saw this as like some sort of masterful political strategy. You know what I mean? So I feel like culturally, the idea that truth and facts and science and shit matters for a long time has been falling apart in this country. It's especially on the political right, but you know, across the board, it's just this giant fucking issue.
but no, yeah, no. I mean, but that's the thing, and it's what has reinforced this feeling that led to the insurrection, because he kept telling them, you're like, since the Charlottesville thing where they went, you know, they killed a person, they attacked people, they, you know, basically kind of took a town hostage of people who didn't want them there. And what was his response? Well, there's bad people all sides. These are good people. These, you know, he looked at them as good people. He didn't look at them as being problematic. He didn't think that they had any wrong. And, you know, flash forward to now, like, what did he say afterwards? You know, yeah, they stole the election from us, but we can't be doing this, so we need you to calm down. What did he say before? They stole the election from us. I need you to march down to the Capitol and let them know. He's ingratiated them. And again, being who he is, being in his position, you know, that was one of the problems. That was one of the problems of electing him. That's why on election day, you had the KKK in North Carolina on bridges and highways waving fucking, you know, Confederate flags and burning crosses and shit like that and celebrating, because again, this guy who got on social media and got in front of the public and kept saying the same things that all these people who felt like they couldn't say what they wanted to say because the black guy was in office and things were changing and people didn't want to hear that shit. He opened the floodgates for them. He like gave them freedom.
First of all, can you see me better now? Is my camera good?
Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. I plugged it out and plugged it back in. Sorry, folks. And you know, to your point about Trump, I think that leads to yet another issue confounding all this is, and maybe it's just because I don't, you know, I'm not that old. I don't have like a long political memory, but I've never seen quite the cult of personality you have around Trump, around anybody else. Like when I was growing up and like Bush was president, for example, sure, I heard people say things about Bush, but that was mostly just because they were Republican and were going to, you know, side with any given Republican. You know what I mean? It feels really different with Trump, where there are people who are not just siding with him because he's the Republican and fuck Democrats, where it's like they fucking worship this guy in a way that's even like they worship him above, you know, even supposed ties to Republican principles like fiscal conservatism, religion, you know, sucking the military's dick. Like, and when they elected him, I was like, this is part of the problem, is that the love they're developing for him is not shared with the rest of you. So if he decides to, like, you know, beef with one of you guys, your elections are going to get hurt because they like him more than they like you. They like him more than they like the party. And you need to be real careful letting like this guy build a cult within your party because that's going to fracture your political influence. And I think, case in point, people coming to try and hang Mike Pence.
Yeah, and it's a throwback to pre, Civil Rights Act things, because you got to think a lot of the stuff that they say and they do now. It was a lot more like, it was probably a lot worse in some ways, but it was because you could freely say, fuck black people. Who cares about what, women need to stay in this place. We need to get rid of all of those like foreigners and stuff like that more freely, because that's how everything was in public. That's how the country was. That's why the whole Make America Great Again thing took off so, much, because he was saying we need to get rid of these immigrants. We need to like get rid of the laws that Obama put in place and all these rules. We should be able to say what we want and like not have to fear like, why is it bad to be white, blah, 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 all this stuff like that. He's doing. He was sparking the whole like, yeah, remember when we can do what the fuck we wanted, when we want it, how we want it? We should make America great again, because for them, that was like how great it was, because the people who taught them all of the, racism and shit that they covet, that's how it was for them. That's how it was for their forefathers. But it ain't like that for them. They wanted that back. And you couldn't be like open again. Like I said, social media, internet gave them that avenue, but until recently, social media and the internet wasn't the norm. So that wasn't, it's like now, again, social media is law. Your opinion is law now, because social media has become the, like, I guess the biggest way to communicate more than anything. It's not public speaking. It's not one-on-one having conversations, and things like that. It's not even just getting on news. Like, again, anybody can grab their phone and say what the fuck they want now and can get liked for it. That's power.
I mean, it really can be. That somebody made this point that I hadn't thought about, is that, back in the day, if you wanted to create some kind of movement, that took a lot of fucking work. You had to, go around, recruit, find ways to spread your message through different media, whether that be newspaper, radio, whatever. It took a lot more time and effort. Whereas now, I mean, you don't even necessarily have to be like a Trump. You might, if you're lucky enough and clever enough,
look at how all
you might be able to just go
challenges
viral.
Right, these challenges, TikTok.
She, I can't remember the person's name, but she made this point, and she was like, pretty much anybody can either generate some sort of movement, or each of us as an individual can help push the movement on through likes, through sharing. So, and in some ways that's good, but you end up with these kind of problems where anybody can kind of push anything.
Exactly.
And the standards of conversation on the internet are fucking awful. You made the point about just like, tweeting out some random bullshit you want to say. Notice, and I would challenge you guys to do this. Like, if you see like some sort of weird ass comment that's like a lie or something like that, go into the comment section. You usually see that somebody has provided evidence for why that's bullshit, and the original poster never responds to this. You know what I mean? Like they feel no compulsion to acknowledge when they're wrong. They might just, especially if there's some kind of troll or bot, they might just continue to be more rude. Conversations devolve into nothingness. If there's an article in the original comments, nobody clearly fucking reads them, and everybody feels the need to respond to something almost like 1 out of like 50 people will have actually read. You know what I mean? Like there's no real standard of conversation that people adhere to on social media, and that's part of the issue. Is that and no, this is not just like Republicans. This is like everybody on the fucking internet. I see this every day, where conversations turn into piles of idiocy and a waste of time, and spewing hatred over the amount of hatred I've seen somebody comment on somebody's post when they just link an article, and the article did not say anything they even claimed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
this is part of the issue. Is I think in real life, if you were talking to a person, you would not be able to do this quite as easily. There's physical barriers to behaving like this, like getting punched in the face, maybe.
Yeah. And I guess this is a good segue to flashing forward past the insurrection, because what happened? Trump got on, he tweeted his videos, a couple of videos, one his quote unquote denouncement video, which wasn't really a denouncement, and all other types of tweets, and finally social media platforms, I guess, had enough of, like you were saying, people tweeting out things that weren't factual, that could be debunked, that nobody was paying attention to, and calling out. And after being harassed for 4 years and finally seeing everything that people were telling you about the danger of letting this guy continually tweet these ridiculous, unethical, not factual things, culminated into this, where a lot of the insurrection was organized through social media, because these groups called for and rallied people on social media. They posted about it, things like that. And you got January 6th, you got Trump continually pushing that agenda, and they decided to ban Donald Trump. Facebook was first. Twitter did a fake ban where they we'll take this tweet down and we'll give you 48 hours to erase this and any other anything that had false claims in it. And then I guess they realized, once they saw Facebook take them down, and then oddly enough, people like Spotify and Instagram and all these other platforms started to do that. They were like, well, if everybody else is doing it, we're going to do it too. So Twitter deleted his account and suspended him. They also decided to suspend thousands of other people who posted a lot of inflammatory things and things that weren't factual, mostly QAnon people and things like that. So Donald Trump can no longer get on social media, literally, because they've banned him from all platforms. Like I said, from Spotify to Facebook to Instagram, Twitter, even something called Shopify, which I was like, wow, he can't even sell stuff on the web now, crazy. All these social media platforms banned him. Parler ended up being removed from Amazon web services,
AWS.
but they're back, by the way, if you don't know.
Not on web services.
No, but they're back it's back up, because they found, ironically enough, the Patriots found a Russian internet service that was willing to host them. So there y'all go, you patriots, you haters of socialism. You fucking you went with a communist.
I need to look more into that, because it sounded like it's not just that it's being hosted on a Russian server. It sounds like there's some cybersecurity nonsense that they're pulling off to I don't know, maybe encrypt connections and shit. I need to read more into it, but I just wanted to make sure we were clear that it was not back on AWS because I don't want Jeff, Bezos. I need my orders and shit to still come in. So I don't want him to fuck my life. Oh God. Yeah. So Trump kicked off of all these social media platforms, and I think I do agree with the decision because as everyone points out, one, violating terms of service, two, inciting violence, blah blah blah. But it opens up this weird conversation because I said a joke to you that like they took away his freedom of speech, and the reason I had done that was obviously just being sarcastic because, as we all tend to point out, these are private companies. The freedom of speech, I can't remember the exact language of the Constitution. I think it says something like Congress shall not enact any law to, blah, blah, blah. Freedom of speech mostly refers to the government stopping you. It doesn't really refer to just private entities.
Yeah, like the government cannot, come after you for anything that you said, basically. Is the gist of it.
Yeah. They can't make any laws that stop you from,
yeah,
with certain exceptions. Like, it's not like you could just like walk into a Walmart and just start.
Right, you can't scream bomb or anything like that. But yeah, any opinions cannot be, persecuted by law or anything like that.
Private entities, businesses, you can't walk into somebody's home and just say whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like there is a line between government action and everybody else, private entities, personal entities, whatever. So that was part of the reason I made the joke is because one, it's literally not a violation of freedom of speech. They can have whatever, terms of service they want on their site. And if you violate them, they're free to kick you off, whatever. But I think it is an uncomfortable thing we're kind of ignoring, in our society, maybe a problem in our society that the line between just like what we call reality and the internet is not as bold as everybody pretends it is. One, that's why you have all this crazy trollish meme behavior coming out into the real world because it's real people on the internet and they're really going crazy. And two, I think there's this blurring or confusion of the idea of like a public space because you have certain companies, certain sites, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, whatever. There's a small group of sites that are essentially the internet. Like to some people, Facebook is literally like the internet. You know what I mean? To some older people, like they usually mean specifically Facebook. That's where they talk to their friends, they get their news. So I think because you have this sort of small collections of power, they really are the net. Who really competes with Google as far as search? You know what I mean? Like who the fuck's using Bing or Yahoo or I can't even AOL?
Yeah, that is true.
If you look into the cloud services, like there's competition in cloud. It's not just Amazon's AWS. There's also Google has cloud.
Microsoft is
Oracle. So I'm not saying there's no competition or anything like that, but it is a pretty small set of like for example, imagine right now if you were just kicked off of everything Trump was kicked off of. Like, how do you communicate with the world? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be clear, that me saying that was not to sympathize with Trump. I do think he should have been kicked off because he was doing some pretty egregious shit. But I think if you put yourself in that position and imagine just like how isolated you'd be socially if that happened to you, it will kind of help you notice that like, yes, there's an internet in the sense of a network of connected machines, but we all kind of interface through a small set of services. So I don't know how to describe this issue. There's like this, people kind of feel like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and all these places are like the virtual public space. You know what I mean? And it's not legally true because they are companies. But I could also kind of get why they have this weird feeling like that because that is pretty much the only place you are on the internet. Like I'm not sure I even heard of Parler before all this went on. You know what I mean? And even that service was created kind of in opposition because they were getting in trouble under these other services.
Yeah, no. People have kind of seeded life on Twitter and things like that as the way life is. you know, that's why people are a lot more bolder than normal. I think, of course, not everybody's just as bold as they are on social media as they are in public still, but they, you know, they definitely have. It's a weird level of comfort to pop off at the mouth and feel like there's no repercussions. It's why you get the people who scream like you're violating my First Amendment rights when you take down my comment that's offensive and
Right.
all of that. It's like you really don't understand, as we've said plenty of times before, that there are consequences to saying what you want. Freedom of speech does not absolve you of consequences. Or as I said to my best friend, I use this analogy with you. If I were to say, fuck you, cardiac, you're a piece of shit and I hate you, and we were in person, I've exercised my right of freedom of speech. When you punch me in the fucking face, you've exercised the right of consequences for what I said of my actions. Because that's the way that life goes. There are consequences to the things that you do and the things that you say. So if you were to beat the shit out of me for calling you like out your name like that, I can't say arrest that man or I'm going to sue you because freedom of speech.
I
No.
mean, you could still have me arrested and
I
sued for
mean,
battery or assault, but I do get your point.
but you know what I mean? Like,
Yes, it was not a First Amendment
that's not
violation.
how, yeah, that's not what happened.
Yes, that is not what they're going to charge me with.
Yeah, they're not going to say that you violated the Constitution at all. That's not how it works. Again, like, I don't know if I told this story on here or not, but I've told it before. I remember when I was working at this place and I was using a computer at work, and I was talking to somebody who had got fired from the job. Now they didn't have a good relationship with our boss, but it was like early before like we opened, so I was talking to them on social media on a work computer. Which, by the way, never do, people. Shouldn't do that. You don't want to get hit for anything. You stay off social media on your fucking work computer. Anyway, so they asked how that person is doing. I was like, they're fine. They're caught a cold, but they're doing okay. And that person was like, oh well. They said something smart about that person. Well, I don't know why. Well, I kind of do know why, but I won't go into details. Um, it got back to my boss from IT that I was having a conversation with this person, and they decided to write me up for divulging personal information for my boss and using the internet for personal use, which everybody did, but nobody got in trouble, of course. But I did, and again, there's reasons I won't go into detail. Um, it is BS though, but that's the consequence. If I'm not supposed to be using, you know, now I could have possibly, made the case or like complained about like, well, other people might be doing this. Why are you coming after me? But at the end of the day, if that's the rule, that's the rule. I violated the rule. I got reprimanded for it. Was my freedom of speech violated? No, not at all.
And, to the extent there are rules, they are typically spelled out. I know we don't all read terms of services, but they are rules. But even beyond just like the rules there, I used to see, I guess I haven't seen it recently, but I would see people like, especially on Facebook, they would put out some random fucking, the kind of comment that's going to incite some reaction, you know what I mean? And then if somebody responds with a disagreement, they'd be like, who asked your opinion? I'm like, if you didn't want to solicit opinions, why are you saying it in a way that
in
everybody
a public
can see
fucking
instead of
forum
in a DM?
Right.
To take your point about feeling like you shouldn't get any sort of consequence, they push it to the point where they feel like they shouldn't even be challenged. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is just their opinion that they can spew out into the ether. And if you agree with me, fine. But if you don't, nobody asked you. It'll fuck up. It's like, but I'm also pointing to this problem we have where people are looking at being on Twitter like being on a public street. You know what I mean? It's really not the same thing, even though we all kind of think of it that way.
Yeah.
Because again, it is a private owned service.
Right.
It's not a space in the sense that like a physical public street is. And I think it's very hard for people to make this distinction. Like, I don't think most of us make this distinction in practice.
Yeah.
Now those of us who aren't acting like a fucking lunatic on social media, maybe the distinction doesn't matter. But I think that's part of the reason you always get these people freaking out about, First Amendment, this and that, and cut off my freedom of speech and blah 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 blah. It's because they're failing to make a certain difference between these two things. But even on top of that, that's why I pointed out, like, imagine if you were cut off from all social media right now. We now are in a world where a lot of communication happens on social media, especially, during the pandemic. So I don't know what we do with this set of issues. I don't know if we need to find some way to update the Constitution to do something with social media. It doesn't feel like a completely separate issue to me mentally anymore, but I don't know. Maybe there's some like great philosopher out there who has a better grasp on this than me, but I do think we need to start considering what communication and speech and all this shit means in a world where social media is such a big fucking part of it. Not advocating that, we enforce, the same freedom of speech standard on social media, but something needs to be done because I do think there's a serious point to be made.
I think the freedom of speech standards are enforced. I just think that nobody wants to acknowledge that. And I think that's the problem. I think nobody wants to, like, again, going back to me getting written up, I remember not too long after somebody I know said some shit and I made a joke to them like, yo, you going to get in trouble for this shit. And they went off on me. It was like, please, nobody better not like try to like get me in trouble for saying what the fuck I want on social media. Problem is, you can't get in trouble for saying what the fuck you want on social media. May not directly, but if you break a company's policy, say they have you, if you sign a letter in which you basically have to adhere to, what is it? I can't think of the name of the letter. I'm sure you've had to sign something and probably in some form, like where if you publicly do something that you could bring like some type of harm to the company, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but yeah,
but something to that effect. Like if they feel like we've seen people get fired because like teachers and stuff get fired because they've said racist shit or they've said stuff about students and things like that. And then they try to crowd like, well, you can't fire me for that. But it's like, there's a public image clause in your contract or whatever. You should have read that shit.
That's why every once in a while I'm like, look, nothing I say is associated with the company I work for. It's why I never mention the company because they're pretty clear.
It's why you see a lot of people put that in their like social media profiles. Like my opinions are not those of,
They make it real fucking clear they don't want to be associated with your, opinions or whatever, because, there's a concern that you are acting as a representative.
Yeah. But that shit can happen. It's like, if that's the way that it's been set up, it will happen. It's just, that's the way it is. Like, and you need to pay attention to those things and be mindful of those things, especially since your quote unquote private social media thing isn't as private as you think, unless you are only tweeting to people who follow you, unless you set up your Facebook that only friends of yours can see your posts, and bear in mind that these people aren't willing to share it or you don't piss somebody off and they don't send that shit to your job. unless you have something like that, everything you say is public domain. So
Sure.
no, nah, you can't fucking call that. Well, it's my right to just say whatever. Again, I ain't saying it's not your right to say that shit. Just may not be as smart for you to say that shit if you don't want to get any repercussions. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. So the reason I said, I think I said like I don't want to say that we need to apply, freedom of speech standards or whatever to social media. I guess I'm saying I don't want to prescribe any sort of law because I don't know what the law ought to be. So, just as an example, the way disinformation spreads on the net, right? Like even with something small, like I remember seeing some random picture of a girl doing some bullshit. And you look at the comments, there's already hundreds of comments saying she's such an asshole, blah, 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 blah. I went and looked it up. It wasn't real. You know what I mean? But like this image had only been up for like a couple hours or something, and you had hundreds and hundreds of people losing their shit about something that wasn't fucking real. And it was an example to me of like how fast bullshit spreads. And you see like on Trump's tweets before he was finally kicked off, that little thing that said, this is bullshit. The danger with doing that kind of stuff after the fact is that by the time you get around to pointing out that it's bullshit, or in some cases, by the time you get around to taking some things down, they've already spread through a lot of fucking people, right? So you could make an argument for being stricter on social media than you are, in real life, you know what I mean? Because the consequences are so much quicker moving and can have so much more dire effect just because of the speed of information flow on the internet. You know what I mean? I'm not saying make that kind of law. I'm just saying, one, I think we need some sort of social, legal, some kind of fucking standard here instead of just ignoring the internet as its own thing. I do think we need to think harder about how to integrate maybe technology as a whole, considerations of technology as a whole into some new laws, into the Constitution or something.
Well, I think
we need to think about what the difference is there.
I think what we actually need is what actually happened. And that is for these platforms to actually adhere to their rules and regulations. Like, again,
I fear leaving it up to them, I guess is my point. Like, I don't think we should have to leave it to them.
No, I think you do kind of. But as I was going to say, to piggyback on your thing, what you need is you need to maybe have a watchdog look at that and be like, you've had a lot of stuff happen. Of course, I think there has always been that. I think part of it was because of what's his name, Piet, that asshole who just quit, who was in charge of internet regulations and stuff like that. Who wanted to, I don't think he was
the
trying
FCC,
to, he was trying to enforce that shit anyway. But I think,
what was his name?
It was Priet. I forget his name. I forget his name.
It shouldn't matter enough to look up. For some reason, I'm curious.
Yeah, Ajit Pai. Yeah, that's his name. Fucking. I just
somehow searching FCC asshole didn't bring him up. I'm surprised.
It should have, but yeah, I just pulled up the article showing that he resigned. Yeah, his last day of resignation was.
I typed FFC. That's why.
Oh, okay, FCC. Yeah. Notice how he resigned the day before inauguration. I guess he didn't want to get fired.
With his big ass cup. I love Google for that guy. Like I can just type FCC asshole and it's literally all just pictures of him for like the first.
He's a dick. He's fucking that bitch. Anyway, I'm sorry. Oops. These opinions are not, I don't know. Or whoever. Anyway, but no, seriously, it's a weird thing because the internet, of course, being the internet, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly how you regulate these things.
Right.
But
I
I
don't know
do
what the
think
answer
that
to that is.
I do think that, perhaps you just have a better watchdog system for these people.
But what do they watch for?
Well, it's clearly somebody's watching something because listening to a podcast, I heard that there's a statistic that came out in the news that since Trump and all those people got kicked off of social media,
Misinformation.
the misinformation that has been on, like Twitter, for instance, has gone down 73%.
Yeah, I saw that number too. That was shocking. I honestly, as much as I attribute a lot of shit to him, that was genuinely kind of shocking.
Yeah.
This guy.
So it's like, if you actually do your fucking job and like police this shit, and I think it's to their benefit to do so, because do you really want the government having to step in and fucking now control all this stuff?
I guess it's still not clear to me so for example, it's not illegal to lie. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know if I would go this far, but it feels like it should be more. There should be some sort of stricter regulation of this on social media because the lies spread so fucking fast. But it would be kind of weird. Like, I think to some people, dystopian to have social media constantly
that's the thing.
chopping your lies off at the legs.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. You shouldn't get like it's one thing to get, a copyright notice from YouTube for something that you post. It's another thing to get like, oh, the government has found that this statement that you made is like, threatening.
Or even if it's not the government, even if it's just the site, like with anti-vaxxers, for example. These are lies, misinformation that is actually dangerous in the real world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet I get the sense a lot of people would be uncomfortable with saying it should be like a law that all social media must, prevent these kind of things from going out. You know what I mean? Like, that's saying lies, again, is not illegal. I think lying is still protected by the First Amendment, but like, should we have a slightly different set of standards on the internet? I don't fucking know. But I do think the consequences of that kind of shit on the internet are different than in the physical world. And we need to start thinking about them in a more careful way.
I mean, but
I could already see like a bunch of libertarians coming over the hills to like stab me in the throat. He's trying to control the internet.
But this is the sadness that has been the 4 years of Donald Trump, is that we're having this type of conversation. We shouldn't have to have this type of conversation. We really shouldn't. Because it's not a cool conversation to have, like, at all. The fact that we have to think, like, if people think, should they be regulating blah, 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 blah? No.
I mean, I used to think a little bit about it. That's why I brought the anti-vaxxer thing, because that was a specific example I used to think about. But I mean, you're right. In the wake of Donald Trump, it is becoming, like many other things in law and in government, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a vulnerability that's kind of being brought up into your face, and now you have to think really hard about what the fuck you do about it. And then again, I'm not smart enough to know the answer to some of that question, because like even the kind of things I just suggested, I'm not really that comfortable with them in practice. Especially because they could easily be abused. There's always that question of like, what counts as a lie, blah, blah, blah. I think one argument you hear, which is it's a bad faith argument, but like, what was the example? Like, what if Twitter and Facebook suddenly decided fuck Bernie Sanders and like didn't let him speak on their platforms and blah, blah, blah. And you're having all this sort of, again, because you only have a few powerful companies that really control this, it's really pretty easy to just like stifle any given political message you want. Or if they did it to like BLM or whatever, it's like, again, that's a bad faith argument. You're just trying to say that to protect Trump on some level. But yeah, it would be kind of weird and dystopian if we allowed that.
Yeah,
I say allowed. I'm sure they could do it if they wanted to. They just don't have any desire to do it. But like, you know what I mean? Like,
and who would want that? Like,
so I think the fact that we have this situation with Trump now is good because it's such. With him, it's so fucking obvious that he should just kind of be kicked off because he really is that fucking dangerous.
but it's obvious for probably a lot more people than we think. We just don't, maybe we don't follow it as much because, again, this was the president of the United States,
right,
doing this.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason he was so dangerous. So, like, I have no problem kicking him off. But since we've already gone through this, I'm like, yeah, we should talk more about it so, we know how to apply it to other less obvious situations.
Well, maybe government officials should regulate themselves better. Maybe that's the thing, because you can't. I don't think it's something that you can put to the public. But I think that there should be I think the government should hold themselves, because it is a job and you can establish laws, as we've seen, and you can establish rules, as we saw Joe Biden do when he put out his executive order to mandate that people wear masks in federal buildings. Because if you work for the government, you got rules and laws too. Yeah. So
yeah, that wouldn't fix it for all of society, but I do think more regulations on them would help a lot. The shit they can get away with sometimes is kind of
because you would think that an official, a politician would want to actually be a little bit more careful about the stuff that they do and say. And sometimes you get these people you get a lot of people who don't, have the God-given sense to use better judgment. Sometimes you gotta fucking, impose it on them. Again, like the mask thing.
There's also a political advantage to being a dick, unfortunately, especially for the right. So, like, they have bad incentives to behave well.
I know. Like, behaving good is because it's the reason why Hawley is still doing what he's doing. Like, there's been confirmations, of course, now that Joe Biden has been inaugurated. By the way, moving down the timeline, we get to the inauguration and they had National Guard all over the place and, people ready for more violence. Thankfully, it went on peacefully. The inauguration happened. Joe gave a middling speech, but it's Joe Biden. Do you really expect any rousing?
But people like that speech.
People liked it. I'm going to be very, very honest here. People like that speech because you've had 4 years of bullshit and nonsensical talk, and now you have an adult who is able to put together words properly, and conduct themselves as an adult. And it was a refreshing thing to see.
Yeah, I think that, if you go back to
that's the sad thing about that shit, is that now mediocrity is going to fucking be celebrated because we had bullshit for so long.
Yeah, I guess like I was saying, you go back to like that brief moment where Beto O'Rourke was becoming super popular. Like, I listened to him talk, I'm like, he's okay. I think y'all are just too used to hearing Trump spew nonsense every fucking day.
And Ted Cruz, and all the people who at the time, it's just like, yeah, this is what we want. And like, then we got to the Democratic, presidential nominee race, and we were like, ooh.
And I remember not being impressed with him at the time. I was like, no, this is a proximity issue where he's standing next to a pile of garbage, so he looks like a pile of gold. That's
right. Yeah, but
y'all are not gonna like
those debates expose that shit real fast. God damn.
He was exposed before that, but
no, I mean, but you have to admit, like there were still a lot of people who were like, yeah, Beto, like because
fair, yeah, he still had. I mean, he made it there, so he still had some support.
Right, and then
he was like in the top 10 for a while. So
okay,
yeah, he must have been like in the top 7 or 8 for a while. So fair,
yeah.
I do think there's some of that with Biden, but I also people he's getting a lot of credit with people for using the phrase like white supremacy. I think it is like I hear people saying like that's the first time a president's used that phrase in an inaugural speech or something like that. I don't know what to make of that, but I'm not as impressed as everybody else, I guess. I guess it would be kind of weird at this point if he didn't say it, but
again, especially following someone who did nothing but the wrong things. Just doing the right thing is now all of a sudden a celebratory moment. It's just like, what was it? It's just like my going back to the whole Twitter shit with all these companies banning Donald Trump and all that. I posted a tweet where I was like, y'all, don't give them congratulations for doing this shit. They did what they were supposed to do, what their rules and regulations said was supposed to happen if you violate them. Why are we applauding these motherfuckers? They did their job, which is what you're supposed to do.
That's another weird thing too, isn't it? It's like I think people get the sense that they kind of move in unison or like are communicating or something. Like, no, I think some of it is just pressure. Like once you see, Twitter do one thing, Facebook's going to feel a little pressured. Amazon's going to feel a little pressure. Like you don't want to be the only ones not condemning the asshole.
Again, once Facebook did it, like because Twitter did that, like I said, Twitter did that bullshit. Oh, we'll suspend you for 48 hours and give you a chance to delete these, sir. But Facebook came up saying, yeah, no, we're just getting rid of them. And then everybody else like, oh shit, Mark Zuckerberg is down. Okay, well, we better because people are going to be like looking at us if we don't.
Which I'm not trying to make the assertion that like all these companies loved him and really wanted him to be there, or other businesses work like that too. Like you do get sort of pressure from the way your competition behaves because you don't want to be seen as like an asshole compared to them. So some of that is just sociology, I guess, just a natural consequence of being in a free market and wanting to be the coolest. Along, I'm sure, with some genuine desire to get rid of his fucking ass. But I don't know. I thought the speech was fine. I keep meaning to go back and listen to this poet everybody's raving about.
Oh, the young girl. I heard her poem was really, really good. I honestly, I can say that I was doing some work during the inauguration. My whole investment in inauguration was just to make sure it went and it happened and he became president. And once that, I was just like, okay, I'm good. I didn't care about the fanfare or anything like that. I just needed it to be official. And yeah, now it's
just going back and watching different parts of the day. Like I watched his speech. I watched, Kamala swearing the new senators, all that shit. I haven't made it to that poem yet, but apparently it's very good.
I mean, it's
a dick for thinking 22 is not that. I
literally just saw, like, as you were saying that, I literally just looked at Twitter, and as of 5 minutes ago, CNN just reposted it. So if you just go on CNN's Twitter, they keep posting it.
Oh, the poem?
Yeah. Like, literally, if you go to CNN's Twitter, you'll see that they just, like, did it again. Like, damn, yo.
I'll check it out. So, but I was, I've listened to like a bunch of slam poetry and shit in the past. So I've been curious about it. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not myself up like 22. I'm like, that's not a toddler. That's graduating college. But whatever. Maybe I'm a dick.
Yeah, because I mean, did you ever do a poem during an inauguration at 22, sir? What have you accomplished? What have you accomplished at 22, sir? Huh?
I mean, I was making a pretty good amount of money at 22, but
you ain't never been on this platform, have you? No. So shut up.
How many people have?
Shut up, sir. You're not as good as her. You're not as
I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, that's true.
So there. Okay.
Hey, I'm not gonna steal from her shot. I heard it was good, and like I said, I'm looking forward to listening to it. I guess it just makes me feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm cynical. Maybe I'm sure they're saying it to be nice to her. To me, it feels kind of mean.
Because I understand this.
So like, why y'all treating her like she's a child? Like, she went out there and kicked ass. Apparently, it's like stop talking about her like she's some kid.
Well, because she's so young, and
she's apparently a very good poet lady. Like you.
But she's so young, and again, like I have to say this to give them some credit. Let's be honest. Where are most of the young people now these days? What are the accomplishments? YouTube channel, doing Let's Plays, Twitch. And this is not to demean that stuff, but TikTok star.
Sure.
You have somebody doing something that's out of the current norm of where you find most young people. Like,
I think it's dope. I guess I've just thought about times where somebody's like, oh, he did this and he's this age. I'm like, why do you have to qualify things with my age? Like, stop doing that. But whatever, I'm sure it's dope.
I think that's part of the reason why it's like getting built up though seriously. Like, she's doing something that's not associated with today's youth. Mainly, and it's a callback, I guess, for them to quote unquote the way it was. Like, I've seen people like saying, "Oh, she's the next Maya Angelou," because how many poets have we celebrated since Maya Angelou? Since Maya Angelou died.
I hope. Maybe I'm hoping for too much, but I'm kind of hoping to make poetry a little more popular because I saw, Taylor Mali. He's a well-known slam poet. He retweeted that and all that shit and complimented it. Because I follow him on Twitter. I follow a few poets on Twitter, but I guess that's part of it. I like slam poetry. One, I've seen like lots of young people do it, but to your point, not at that level. And like, and further to your point, like I think it's not as like culturally celebrated to be like writing good shit.
Yeah, like to it's not to get totally off topic, but it's part of the reason why I like see some people get really, really excited over certain rappers, and it's like, yeah, that's because you're used to mumble rap now. So them actually putting together words coherently, of course, it's celebrated. Stuff like that. Like, it's just not I guess it's something. Like I said, it's just not as part of the norm as it used to be. So when it pops up, people are just like, whoa, hey, yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'm just a bit sensitive because I've always loved poetry, and I'm like, stop focusing on it. It's put out awesome poetry is and get more people to write and fucking your poetry.
And hopefully she will encourage people to like be more open with it. Shit, I should start writing some poetry and like getting good at it.
She inspires. But it was a good thing, man. God. I'm just thinking back to what you said about how essentially the standards have been so low for like 5 years that anything feels like a goddamn oasis of wonderfulness.
Exactly. I mean, what poets did he have? Like, what? Well, fucking, I'm just saying, but what, like, remember, last president defunded, I forget the name of the department, but the department that like of the art, he defunded the arts program in the government. Now we have arts.
I think that adds on top of, my point about the way people are culturally. Like there's not a good, healthy respect for the arts, at least not in this country. I'm not going to show like the UK, but like I've always felt that because again, as somebody who's loved poetry since I was like a kid, I'm like, it is weird. Like nobody seems to be interested in poetry. Like every once in a while I would like send like a slam poetry video. I think it's in my room. I got like a book of poetry from Lacey Roop. I used to really love her slam poetry. I'm like, there's certain art forms in this country that are just not celebrated for some reason.
No, it's not. But we've seen it culturally be, pushed to the side.
And Trump was not some sort of intellectual giant that could probably appreciate poetry. No, well, plenty of offense, but like, can you imagine like somebody reading? Imagine the look on his face. On camera. Could. If somebody was like spewing out poetry.
I could. He probably claps every time he hears "Hickory Dickory Dock."
I mean, honestly, if he had a poem read out, it would probably be about him.
No, not exactly. It would be written Dickory about him. Dock is his level. He needs the childhood shit that we used to get. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. That's his jam.
So I do want to get to the positivity bit, but I feel like because I'm in technology, I've been thinking a lot lately about how technology is feeding into this. I kind of jumped into that without talking enough about the attack itself. So I apologize for that because it was serious and I may have been too consumed in the intellectualism of technology and its bullshit. But yeah, these people are not fucking patriots, as they say. I don't know if you saw that clip of, I guess it was like outside the building. They dragged this police officer out and they're beating him. And this one dude comes up with the American flag and beats the officer with it.
Yeah.
I think I messaged you about it. I was like, can you think of like even any image that's more disrespectful to the idea of America than dragging a police officer out of the Capitol and beating him with the American flag? Like, I can't even make up something that apt.
I mean, it's on so many levels bad. I mean, think about it. Colin Kaepernick knelt during the, national anthem. He disrespected the flag. He didn't love America. He was, he hated the government, all that shit. And here you go, somebody taking the sacred flag and using it as a weapon against a government official as you attacked a government facility. And Colin Kaepernick did what now?
Anyway, we could talk about how apparently ill-prepared they were to deal with this problem. The way they were outnumbered, the way, you see that image of, I'm sorry, I looked up his name before this too, the black officer who is like now infamous image of him. I forget his
first name, but Sergeant Goodman.
Apparently, I guess he was like leading them away. I don't know if this is the same guy, but
yeah, that's him. He's the black guy who was like running through the building and like telling them, having them follow him. Because, as he led them away from the area where the people in Congress were hiding.
My hat's off to him, but as iconic as that image has become and as brave as he is and, all the celebration he deserves, probably shouldn't be the case that he's outnumbered that many to one.
Yeah.
I say probably. It obviously isn't the case. It's other footage of like these two officers standing in front of, I guess the entry to the floor must have been. It was where the Capitol Police were like barricading them up. And these two are like standing in front of the door, in front of the barricades. And you can hear the rioters, protesters. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't want to have this debate between rioters, protesters. Like, to me, that's...
rioters is the proper term because they weren't.
Sure.
That's
right, but
protest.
I agree. But I sort of want to keep correcting it every fucking time. I'm content saying people who attack the fucking Capitol. I think we're all saying people in agreement.
Yeah, that's even more proper.
So they're standing in front of the door, and you hear some of them saying, we don't want to hurt you. People have been hurt outside. We want you to go home, blah, blah, blah. Like this weird, we're on your side, but we'll also kill you if you don't move. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty much threatening to harm and or kill police officers, and they're acting like they're the good guys. You know what I mean? That's how delusional these motherfuckers are. They're standing in the Capitol, threatening harm to police officers. And those police officers moved, and I'm sure that there are probably people who think of them as cowards or whatever, but like, what were they going to really do? Like, even if they unloaded every round into this crowd, they don't have enough ammunition to deal with this problem. That's a lot of motherfuckers. You know?
I would have been happy, if they would have did that.
And I think there's a good argument to be that they should have been firing sooner. But I do, and I think even a different officer, he wasn't one of these, but he made the same point. He's like, he was kind of surrounded by them and he was thinking about what to do. And, should he pull out his gun and shoot them? He's like, even if I unload all my rounds, I don't have the ammunition. They're going to overtake me. Which I think is correct. They would kill you. You would not be able to take them all on. You'd probably kill some of them, yeah, but that would also help incite them to murder your ass. You're not going home.
But it's a failure of their leadership. It's a failure to the officers in the sense of the ones who let them in, the ones who were being like nice to them and, directing them, like the guy who let the barricade and was directing them where to go and stuff. Like, no, that's a failure of your job. You don't do that.
Sure, and then you have some of them that are
at the same time.
Yeah.
I do understand, like, if you're feeling outnumbered, you might want to stand down sometimes. Like, okay, that argument I can understand, but the failure of leadership and the reason why the sergeant at arms was forced to resign was because what are you doing? You see these people coming in. Why didn't you call for DC police? Fuck the fact that the president didn't order it. They're attacking the Capitol. Call for federal police. Call the city. Ask them for help. Call all local law enforcement and alert them of this issue. You know how many police officers are in the city of DC that could be called? In DC alone, you have Capitol Police. You have Homeland Security. You have city police. You have Metro, the fucking metropolitan like transit system police. You have fucking park service police. That's just 5 right there. And I'm sure there's more. I can't think of them all.
I remember you sent me some images of, like, I guess later in the evening once they started getting more under control.
That was the
fighting back.
And that was the DC police, by the way.
And I was asking you, like, who are these people? Because they look totally different. And I was like, I think it's a good reminder that we use the term police, but these could really refer to like many different sort of organizations that count as police. Yeah. And I did not get the sense that they were, as separate organizations that coordinated. Because I'm looking at like, these like 1 or 2 officers or a couple of small groups off by themselves. And I'm like, y'all motherfuckers are really isolated right now and like spread out. It's not clear to me that you know what's going on with the other groups over there. Like what the fuck's going on? Like, I'm not sure you have this under control. It's just as far as information, going between your groups. So yeah, woefully unprepared. And of course, it's worth noting, we talk about all this crazy cultist shit as though it's just like these random people in the woods or something that only believe in it. There's plenty of people like, we mentioned, what's her name? Marjorie Green in government, some police officers. I think you mentioned somebody who was like a veteran or something, like one of the people who was, I assume you were talking about one of the rioters there.
Yeah, that was the lady who got shot. She was an Air Force veteran.
Oh, shit. The point being, the madness can spread through any level of society is the point I'm making. So you have that kind of issue to contend with. But so again, like I do think more force would have been justified, but looking at some of that footage, I do kind of understand why you might not want to, make that shot. I do think some of you would have been killed if you did, like at least before you got.
Like I said, okay, so your immediate on-hand staff weren't prepared. Again, where was the call for the police to come? Because they were pretty chilled and relaxed in going through that whole thing, and they were in there for a while. It wasn't like
that was a different failure. Yeah,
that's why I said it was mainly a failure of leadership, because they should have came in there with full force and routed the motherfuckers out. They should have called and they should have rallied. And it's not just, I'm not just blaming the leadership of the Capitol Police. You have to blame the leadership of the government too, because they kept trying to get DC, like some people kept trying to like have them get the National Guard to come down immediately, and Trump would not make the call.
Yeah.
And eventually Pence had to make the call and coordinate with the governor. Because, I mean, not the governor, but the mayor of DC. Because people were trying to like blame her, but she was like, yo. See, and this is one of the problems with having all these fucking different police. I swear to God, in the city. That's why I say it's partially the leadership fault of the Capitol Police too, because there's jurisdiction like rules. I can't come and just like, you know, no other police force or no other like, you know, law enforcement agency could have descended like on that, you know, on those grounds, with the exception of maybe Secret Service, but Secret Service were more of in a protecting mode at that point. Anyway, they're not like a law enforcement agency at that level, but DC police can't just say, fuck it, we're coming to your ground and we're going to handle this unless they're given the right of jurisdiction. And that's where, like I said, again, failure. Because you could have called the mayor of DC and be like, yo, I need your boys now. Y'all need to come through and get this. Like, you know, you could have called fucking park police and like, yo, y'all are on the mall anyway. You need to come and help us fucking like get away from the Lincoln Memorial as fast as possible and come over here, please, or something. You know, again, Metro, the Smithsonian Metro Station. There is a Capitol South Metro Station a couple of blocks from there. Call them motherfuckers, rally them, something. Like they could have done all of that, and they just didn't want to. But if it were Black Lives Matter, as it was when the Black Lives Matter had a protest, and as we've seen from the pictures, y'all were prepared for such an event for them, even though they were just there to have their signs and, you know, actually protest for real. But y'all had the military forces and like ready to push back.
That was part of what I was going to get at too, because I heard a lot of this comparison. It's like, well, if it was, you know, BLM, they would have just started shooting them and blah blah blah. And I was like, I think, you know, that's kind of a chicken and egg thing. First of all, to your point, when it was BLM, there was already a lot of motherfuckers on site. Here, there was like a couple handfuls. So it's not clear to me that they weren't responding because it wasn't BLM. It's because they didn't have the force. When you sent me those images, they were like in the evening and like a bunch more. The images you sent me were like, you know, this officer runs up and like shoves this dude in the back of it down the stairs and shit. It looked a lot more rough. I'm like, sure. They're a little more ballsy now because there's like a shit ton more of them than there were this morning.
Yeah.
So I think like that was part of the issue.
But yeah, they didn't rally. As soon as they started breaking in, they didn't rally.
So it took them a while to.
It was a couple of hours before they started to like It was a couple of hours before they initiated the National Guard, and that's scary because you had people in there like I said. Go ahead.
No, there was someone talking about, I don't know if it was Pelosi, but talking about like just the communication of trying to get the National Guard and trying to get the permission. I guess, like you said, Pence eventually talked to the DOJ about it, but it's like, you couldn't even get the, and I think this points to like a political issue and the issue of political influence on how these forces get deployed. So I think for like with the BLM, you know, you obviously had somebody like Trump and certain other government officials who have beef with them. So they're probably more willing to deploy them out to begin with. Whereas I don't know that there was any such impetus to deploy against these motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Hence there being so few.
No, but it's kind of a, you know, consequence of race too, because again, let's be honest, like when it's a group of white people, quote unquote, protesting, everybody's a little bit more lax But when it's minorities protesting, well, if what you're going to have a group like they showed a couple of nights later in New York how there was a Black Lives Matter protest. I think it was near Trump Tower or something, and it was 200, 300 people, and there was an equal amount, if not more, police presence at that damn thing, and it's like, do you really need that many police for that many people? But it's just the way it always goes. And it's just sad because if it's a minority group, if it's a black group, police is going to show in full force to intimidate and, regulate. But go back to the Michigan thing when they stormed the fucking Michigan Capitol with fucking automatic rifles. Why aren't y'all calling the fucking state police to come help out, them to get these motherfuckers out?
There is a lot of issue with the decision of like how much force to send and when and all that. So, if we look at some of the BLM protests last year, a lot of the images that struck me were during the peaceful protests and shit. All the officers that would like hit cameramen, for example. I saw that hitting people that were just kind of sitting there, like a lot of violence towards the peaceful people. But like I remember seeing this, and maybe some of those police were doing it to make a point about like, oh, if you don't trust us, shit won't be safe. I don't know what their reasoning was, but I would see occasionally these images of people like robbing stores and police just doing fucking nothing about it. Like, I can't remember where the image came from, but like a bunch of people rush the store, take a bunch of shit. And it's like, all right, y'all had all this energy for the people that weren't going to fight you back, really. For the flower children sitting around singing and shit. But these people actually committed crimes over here. Where's this force now? Like, is it just because you're afraid to fight people that are actually violent? Like, what the fuck's going on? So there's a lot in police conduct that's very.
A lot of it's color. I mean, let's be serious. Like,
so what do you mean by color there? Because a lot of the people I'm talking about were black.
That's what I'm saying. But it's a lot of it is like, color, race can bear an issue. Circumstances can bear an issue, but a lot of times, like, it comes down to your color because, again, these people came to the Capitol armed, some of them, and they stormed it, and they were pleaded with, they were kind of argued with, but
so the specific example I'm talking about with people like robbing stores, back during the BLM stuff, those were all black people too. But I guess my point
it wasn't all black people though. That's the problem.
I'm talking about very specific video images where I saw them and they were black. Yes, and they did nothing about it.
Well, a lot of times in riots they don't.
Right.
Because
but I'm saying like,
but at the same time, when the whole thing, you only saw the images of black people. You didn't see the images of the vandalism that were done by other people because it is a matter of color. Like,
I saw them too. I'm saying,
and they're not going to do anything if you're doing it to your own neighborhood. It's always been like that. It's in America. Let's be honest. They've never, like, when the Rodney King riots happened, they were comfortable as hell with them tearing up South Central California.
That's a better. I guess that's my point. Is that
so that's why I'm saying it is a matter of color because they're not going to let you go to Beverly Hills and do that shit because that's where they live. So it tends to always. It's not always, but it tends to more times than not weigh towards race, sadly, in those situations, and it shouldn't. All things equal, you should be, especially if there is acts of like violent intent, like with the Capitol. Yeah, like I'm I'm not as big on like, oh, if they're like tearing up stores and stuff like that, you need to be aggressive with them. You know, you could be aggressive, you can't. I don't know how you properly handle that situation because I've never seen them actually handle it properly in the beginning. So I don't know I don't know what is the proper thing. 'Cause apparently for them, the proper thing is to let you tear it up unless you're in a specific area.
I guess the bigger point I'm making is the way they decide to use force in general seems like nonsense.
It is.
To where, and that's why I sorry, hit the mic there. That's why I juxtapose those two images, because you see like actual violence versus people just sitting around and protesting. One of them has way more force, even though they were related to the same sort of thing. It's like, even here, y'all didn't get ready for this. And again, there's different causes for that. Some political decisions and leadership might help lead to that, but I think that's part of the reason police in this country aren't very trusted. It's like, when y'all choose to exercise force is idiotic. In some cases, seemingly racist, at least, but like,
yeah, it is idiotic. Idiotic is a perfect like term for it. You know, racist is the subterm of the idiocy. Overall, because, but the sad thing is that we've seen too many times the racial element come up, like in the worst ways. I think that's why you get so much ire towards the police, because imagery counts and they should be aware of that, but they don't care. I think it's weird because I think Jim Cornette kind of like made a perfect point about the way the police are now, though, because he mentioned how back in the day, people used to have a real big problem with skinheads. Are you familiar with skinheads?
sure.
Or the skinheads used to be a big problem in this country, but somehow you don't really hear about skinheads anymore. And he made mention he remembered seeing an interview with somebody. I don't know if it was a former skinhead or whatever, but he was like, well, here's the thing, when we were out and about publicly, we would get, harassed, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of us decided to trade in, what we were doing for uniforms. So a lot of them went to the police force because that's a good way where you could publicly exhibit, I guess your hostility and not find consequences in a lot of their minds, because over the years, and again, this goes back to, post Civil Rights Act stuff, cops openly fucking fucked up people of color and aided the Ku Klux Klan and things like that. And they were a part of the Ku Klux Klan. They were members of the Ku Klux Klan. They did that shit because they could, because that's just the way it was. And again, it's like the internet. People had to find a place where they were welcome, and police is one of those places where they were welcome.
I think that all can feed into other problems too. So, one example somebody pointed out was part of the reason, the police at the Capitol might have been caught off guard is to the point of some of the protesters. We're on your side. We supported you, blah, blah, blah. Like, you might think it's unlikely that they would attack police officers because the political right and these people in particular for so long have been jerking off police officers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I was like, and I heard this argument and I was like, fair enough, but that's also a problem by itself. And to go back to some of those BLM protests, I think that's part of the issue too. It's like when they were attacking those peaceful protesters, part of the reason I condemned it, not just because excessive use of force. But I interpreted that as this response to being called out, essentially. Like they didn't like the, quote unquote disrespect, and they were taking it out on the protesters. And I was like, back then I was making that point. It's like, part of the reason you guys are so harsh on these guys right now is because you're looking at them as the enemy because they're constantly talking shit about you. In some cases for good reason, but and I think that sort of adversarial attitude that a lot of police have, cultivated against, more liberal groups that are going against them is also another issue we need to kind of resolve in this country as well. Because I did think his point, I don't know how much weight I would put on his point, but I did think it was a fair thing to notice is that, yeah, these people who did come and attack are also the same people who've been jerking you off every day for like the last 10 years at least. Longer, but you know what I mean? Like, how do I say this? There's a different sort of cultural relationship they have with the police because they, Blue Lives Matter, praise police. They have so much love.
They don't give them the criticism that other people rightfully do.
Right. Like they're constantly fucking, I shouldn't keep making this jerking off motion, but they're constantly flooding them with bullshit love. Whereas, the other side of the political arena, what's it, ACAB, all cops are bastards. There's a lot of ire toward them from that other side. That alone could have huge impact on how they respond to a situation. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that the other side should suddenly start jerking off the police too, but it is a very significant attitude dynamic difference that, we need to deal with. Not just in terms of the rate. And I think if you look at some of those protests and you see all this footage of like white people getting beat up too, it's like, well, yeah, because they're on the side that are calling police bastards. So of course they're also angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, calling them out for their bullshit is not good.
So that is yet another thing to contend with. But yeah, I don't want to dwell on. It's important, but I just wanted to circle back to the attack itself because I know I kind of skated over it, and there's like a lot of things to unpack there. But after that, it has been very. I don't even want to say positive, just kind of odd to see like how happy and vibrant everybody seems. Like I keep seeing this footage of Fauci like being interviewed. I don't know if whatever the press conference was, or he was with Rachel Maddow the other day, and I'm like, I don't remember seeing this motherfucker smile and laugh this much this entire time. Like,
today Deborah Birx came out and was speaking. She was like, "Yeah, that he was just lying his fucking ass off." Like about everything, and like she was like that chart that he used was like that wasn't her chart, but he, like even the people who were going along with it are coming out and was like, yeah, nah, this was fucked up, which is it's damn sad, Yeah,
it is sad because like I know a lot of people are looking at it and they're kind of happy and enjoying it, but it's like the fact that these people are clearly displaying how free and less burdened by bullshit they're feeling. It's just a reminder about how burdened by bullshit they have been the last, 5 years. Like when I see Fauci, like finally we could talk about the science, I'm like, dear God, we should have been able to talk about the science the whole time.
Yeah, we should have.
We shouldn't have to celebrate being able to tell the truth.
And it's going to be a long haul because the lasting damage, like I've been looking on CNN and I've been seeing opinions. Like one particular opinion I just pulled up while people were talking about Biden's authority is on the line already in the first full week. And it's going on about because, the executive orders that he's done that have taken down some of the Trump stuff. Like there's no more, what was it? Was it the Muslim ban that he took away? I think he got rid of that.
I was thinking about.
I know he added the travel ban. He did put the travel restrictions back in place. He did the thing with the mask moratorium. And he's walked back a couple of things that Trump has did, and people were just like, yeah, he's threatening his authority because he's being too aggressive, and he might not be able to like find common ground and all that. And it's just like it's frustrating, and it's one of the reasons why it's always going to be difficult moving forward, at least for a while, for the Democratic Party or anybody who has an inclination of actually trying to do things that are universally beneficial for everybody, as opposed to, I know a lot of people think like what he are trying to say is what he's doing is one-sided, but it's like the things that he's doing, the economic relief plan, that's not just for Democrats, that's for everybody. But you're getting pushed back on that. You're getting pushed back on the fact that he wants them to wear masks. Like the ridiculous opinions that they're making about like how everything is his. It might be too divisive if he's too aggressive on trying to change things. Like, why can't he do his job?
I mean, I've heard the argument that, this tendency to, especially among Democrats, not to rock the boat too hard is not healthy, and that they really should push hard early on. Partially just to prove to everybody that having them in power will actually help you. So it's a rule like you want to affect change, tangible change in people's lives as soon as possible, and change that they understand and they can attribute to you, like be grateful to you for. Because there's a lot of things Democrats do where it's like, I don't know, they don't want to upset the political right too much. They don't want to upset their Republican colleagues. And I'm like, nah, this breed of motherfuckers does not want to work with you at all. So,
right, that's the thing. Like everybody's talking about, like everybody celebrated his speech because he talked about unity and stuff like that. And I get why he had to say it, but let's not go too far on the whole unity thing, because they don't want unity. And you keep hearing them talking about like, we can't be doing this like impeachment, which by the way, I think we've glossed over, is that after the math of the whole assault, Donald Trump was impeached for the second time, being the first president to ever be impeached twice. They are going to hold a trial. It is going to be February 9th. Reason for that being cited that they're trying to get the confirmations done first. Then they'll concentrate on that. Which, okay, cool. You're doing a trial, so hey, that's good. But you keep hearing the word unity thrown around for this. Like, how could you do this? This is just going to cause a bigger divide. Bull fucking shit. Shut the fuck up and stop like doing that. And this kind of goes back to that whole like you're coddled children point I was talking about earlier. Like, why do we have to now just be like bygones are bygones? You did what you did, but we forgive you. Why do we have to treat you like the spoiled little child that acted out? Like, sure, you scratched up daddy's like BMW, but you were just mad. It's okay. You don't have to like, you're not going to get punished for it. These people broke the law. Donald Trump incited an insurrection. He's dangerous.
A lot of Republican leadership
were
on board with him. A lot of them voted, in favor of him.
A lot of them were a part of that rally for the whole thing. You've gotten like, you've had the senator, I forget her name, who came out and said that she saw some of her colleagues helping these people in the building. Like,
it's also something they're investigating now, apparently.
That's not, no. You don't just say it's all forgiven. If they did that, they were a part of, a dangerous situation where these people could have killed federal, they did kill a federal employee. They could have killed congressional members. They basically tried to everything short of overthrowing the government completely. Why no? This is not a divisive thing.
Biden has really advocated for forgiving them so explicitly.
No, he hasn't. I'm not saying him. I'm talking about the Republicans. How they're using this as this is just so divisive. You can't, because we're so separate. We need to come together. You weren't trying to come together in the last 4 fucking years. The last 4 fucking years where people were asking you to do the right thing for certain people, right? You were like, fuck you. We're going to do what we want to do. Now people are trying to now the Democrats are in power, and it's not like they're trying to we just want to do what we want to do. They want to do things to help people and to make things better, to get us out of this pandemic. And you're screaming, this is too divisive. What?
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how everything to them is this super cynical political game. Like the way you watch Mitch McConnell kind of you got to kind of see him thinking through how can I make this best work for me / the Republican Party. That's why he was kind of silent for a bit on the impeachment stuff, but actors like Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, I think Jim Jordan, immediately well, you say you want fucking unity, you should forgive Trump. That'll help heal the nation. It's I don't even know to what extent any of them believe any of this shit. It's just, it's all a fucking game. It's all, how can I get the most points, the most power politically is what I mean by points. It's nothing fucking matters to them except winning. Yeah, I guess to your point about, the Democrats actually wanting to help people. I don't even know that I believe a lot of these Republicans care about things like, the debt, lowering the debt, fiscal conservatism, blah, blah, blah. No, they just want to win. They just kind of want power. They just kind of vaguely I'll rile up the base. That's what my base likes. That'll keep me elected.
Who's the last president to lower the debt?
Was it me?
No. I'm still broke, so you ain't lower my debt. You suck if you were the president.
All right.
No, it was Bill Clinton. It was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton lowered the debt. The debt was below $1 trillion for the first time in decades under Bill Clinton. His 8 years, we had it was something I want to say, it wasn't that, it was high, but not high for normal. It was definitely under 800 million, if not lower, way lower than that. The national deficit. It was pretty damn low. It was damn near close to being gone under him. And then 8 years after, what happened with fucking Bush
Junior? Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. It's the qualification. That's fine. But,
yeah. It was an obvious qualification.
Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't just his father, although his father did lead to a recession.
They never really helped. Look at Trump's presidency, the way they all went on board with the tax cuts, as he so brilliantly, I wanted to call them the tax cuts.
Or more importantly,
marketing Jesus.
We can't be spending money, but you wanted to give trillions of dollars for a fucking wall.
Right.
You spent trillions of dollars to start the Keystone Pipeline initiative.
They don't have real. I know it's gonna sound especially in this era of unity we're supposed to have, but they don't really have genuine ties to principles. They just kind of like they're perfectly fine wasting money, just not on shit like education or healthcare or essentially things that feel like a handout to poor people.
Yeah, they'll give a military contract in a heartbeat.
Sure, it doesn't matter. Military's like, what? We already have 2,000 million nukes. You want? Okay, we can double it. Whatever.
But it's not getting the nukes; it's giving like Lockheed Martin or Boeing another contract. We need to feed these like billion-dollar companies more money because they're struggling.
I just mean it's not like a proper assessment of military need. It's just kind of like, well, it's the military.
No,
we
it's
like
like
the
I
military,
said.
so let's give them.
But that's the thing. They use the guise of we were trying to keep the military when the reality is I need to pay back Lockheed Martin for helping me win my election. So let me go ahead and slide these contracts for a new. I mean, we just got a new Air Force One built, by the way. Did we need a new Air Force One? I don't know. Probably not. But we do have a new, like, I believe it was like, what was the price? Cost of the new Air Force One. Let me look this up.
But
$3.2 billion.
Did you see the story on speaking of wasting money? I guess apparently Trump has extended the Secret Service protection for himself or for his family, for certain key allies of his. I can't remember all their names now. But apparently like all these people are getting more Secret Service protection for like the next 6 months, I believe. Which is going to cost like a shit ton of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact figure, but it's like, millions and millions and millions. I'm like, but this bothers nobody. Same motherfuckers are like, we need to not.
Well, no, because they don't want nobody touching them, so fuck that.
Abuse of power, waste of money, it doesn't matter. But back to this argument, like I've heard it from a few people. I do kind of agree that your best move, if you're the Democratic Party, is to really just knock everybody's socks off with positive change in their lives and just show them this is what the world is. You had that last 4 years. Here we are. Here's why we're better. We're about to show you. Your lives are about to actually improve. That's not going to convince everybody, but make it clear that you are doing shit that is working and that it's working because of you. Not because of all the shit the Republicans could have been getting done before, you're doing now. And I think that's the strategy to go with. Obviously you should do it because it's the right thing to do, but don't get too bogged down in trying to make it all bipartisan, because I don't have a lot of faith in them that they care to do that.
Yeah. And I think you just need to be more publicly open about that instead of trying to be politically correct with it. Well, not necessarily politically, because the political correct way is what they want, to be quite honest. But stop trying to be politically polite. That's the better way.
Fuck the humility. Be like, hey, the Democrats did this for you. Remember that, Chief.
But yeah, you got to stop, begging their pardon and stop, it would be really nice if you to go along. Just it's sad because we're kind of back in the same position in a lot of ways that we were with Obama, where you have a technical majority this time. Like Obama had a majority of something like, what was it? Like 54 to 46 or something like whatever it was. But he couldn't get anything to necessarily stick. He had this fear of stuff sticking because, if they got back to if it wasn't a 60 vote majority, there was always the chance that it could get overturned easily, which we've seen in the Trump era. A lot of things get rolled back, but he had this. We're back to that. I need 60 votes. Bullshit back all over again. Which means that we need to convince other people on the other side to play along, and that's the whole.
And that would be reasonable if the other side was reasonable.
Yeah.
Like think about the number of times I can't remember like what they were debating over, but the number of times Nancy Pelosi was like, we're ready to fucking negotiate with them, but they can't even tell us what they want. We don't even know what Trump wants in exchange for us getting like DACA, for example. You know what I mean? Like they don't have a plan. They just say no and don't have a real counter.
No, they really don't. If you look at the Republican Party, it's a party of no policy, no real plan. They just want to be in control and to be obstinate to anything that they don't personally believe in. Not even necessarily a political thing. Because, I can't see how this new bill, which they're now already gearing up to fight, like giving money to states and to people to survive. I don't understand your argument against it. Like your best argument is, well, this is just too much spending. We shouldn't be like, I'm afraid this is bad spending. But again, you commissioned like all of these contracts to have all this military research done for what? Stuff like that. So why are you lying to me that you have a problem with spending? You'll spend on just about anything. But I tell you, I want to give your constituents, the people who voted for you, money, and that's a bad look.
I'm trying to remember the name of the organ, like because you have like several key like conservative organizations that kind of back Biden's stimulus package. There's one in particular everybody likes to mention.
Is it the Lincoln Project?
I don't think so. I can't remember what the fuck it is now. But I guess the general point is that there's plenty of like, groups, economic groups that support this idea and think that we need to do this. It's not like just some random hippy dippy socialist give everybody money. Like plenty of experts agree that this is a necessary act.
Yeah.
Did you see that shit during the inauguration? It was like Obama, Clinton, and Bush together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were doing the speech.
Yeah, which is just really hilarious to me that we're just kind of pretending Trump didn't exist and just kind of like, yeah, it was Obama, then Biden. That's what happened. But somebody, after watching this, somebody made the point that like the way the modern Republican Party behaves, even somebody like Bush doesn't fit in anymore. It was kind of a weird point to make, but like, yeah, like they're so just obstinate in general, no matter what. People want to look at somebody like Romney as like some kind of hero. Romney's not that impressive, but like,
no, because he doesn't like.
Even he does.
He just came out and said, "Nah, I don't support this shit."
Right. Like, fuck. It's. I don't know. Fuck them. Just do it. Just do what you got to do because they're gonna fight. If you tried to give Mitch himself $1 million, he'd be like, "No, I hate money." Like they're just gonna fucking be obstinate no matter what.
Right. I mean, it goes back to the example of ACA that I mentioned a couple of months ago, where someone made the statement that ACA is basically Romney's plan, yet Romney and everybody in the Republican Party denounced it. he gave you what you wanted, but apparently since you didn't do it, it wasn't good enough. Maybe I don't.
Well, again, they
Like
get political
it
points.
makes no sense.
They
Like
get political points with their base for being dicks, right? Like it's like, hey, yeah, these are the guys telling the Democrats to shove it. Yeah, like
but it's like
that alone.
But it's the old, cut your nose off to spite your face thing. You're literally fucking yourself just because you don't want to give the other side, like, points, or at least the appearance that they're making points. Because a lot of Republicans voted for ACA. Why are you trying to get rid of it? You wanted it.
Like I said, their base hates liberals and they like because going back to those kind of examples, part of the reason that I think they were trying to express is like, look, I can't be seen like siding with you. All right, you're the enemy. They don't like you. Like me having any kind of connection to you is not good look for me. Fuck off. I need to be seen by my base. It's like I'm fighting you because you're the enemy.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it. It's that fucking part in Obama's book where he was talking about I forget the name of the senator, but when he sits down to him, he pointedly asks him, be honest with me. If I gave you everything you just told me you wanted, would you still not, vote for ACA? And the guy looked at him. It's like, no, I wouldn't vote for it still. Because they just want to be fucking in opposition. That's it. They just need, like you said, they need to show that they're fighting the other side.
Yeah. It's a terrible incentive. I mean, help. That's why, some of the deference you see towards somebody like Trump. It's like they recognize that Trump is a cult leader and very popular with their base. And they're not inclined to piss him off and get on his bad side and, look like a Trump hater in front of their, because we've seen that has some political consequence for them. Like that can affect their votes. I don't think that's admirable to be like doing the wrong thing to keep, your seat in office, but they have terrible incentives to behave right. Yeah, like I said, for the Democrats, just kind of do it. Fuck it. Just
yeah, but we Democrats and liberals have that problem that it's an understandable but sickening problem of always wanting to not become the bad guy. And that's the problem when you feel or that you are on the morally right side of things. You tend to still be moral and try to do the right thing and play nice and all of that, instead of just be like what you probably need to be, which is fuck this. We need to get things done we feel it's actually for the better good of things.
I do think the instinct to want to actually work together and come to agreement rather than just essentially bullying your way through legislation quirks to get what you want is a good thing. Like, yeah, you shouldn't want to just like rely on technicalities and bullshit to force the issue, but you are not in a regular situation. You know what I mean? Like, you are unfortunately in a situation that will not allow for that sort of adult behavior. You're in a room with a bunch of screaming toddlers, and that's just kind of the world you're in. You have to deal with the consequences of that fact.
Yeah, I think, just I think it's gotten to the point now where sometimes it's kind of like you can't get someone to see just how much better something can be unless you just do it. You know what I mean? Like you have to. I think that's the point where we're probably at, where unless you just, you know, don't show them and do it, and then they'd be like, "Oh, this isn't as bad as I thought." You know, it's just not probably going to get done ever because they're stubborn fucking children. It's like trying to get your kids to try something new to eat. You literally have to force it on them to make them realize that it's not as nasty as they think it might be.
And you know, prioritize the things that are gonna like impact quickly, because there's certain things that you need to do that are important but won't have an impact until like much later, maybe even after your presidency. You know what I mean? Like some of the things it sounds a little cynical, but some of the things you need to do need to have provable positive impact like now, so that they attribute it to you as opposed to whoever happens to be president by the time they take effect. You know what I mean? And I think there needs to be some communication there to be like, look, you see that dope shit you just got? You know who got that for you? Democrats. You know, the Republicans, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't shit talk to the Republicans while you do it. Maybe that's a step too far.
But I mean, you might need to start doing that to get people to realize like these guys aren't after your best intention.
Do you think, how do I pose this question? The Republican Party will have any interest in changing following Trump? Because I remember some years ago, I don't know if it was after like Obama won or whatever, but they were kind of doing this like moratorium of how like, you know, Republican Party needs to like fucking, you know, become more racially diverse and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and I look back and I'm like, that never happened, did it? It just got worse.
Yeah, because they went, like, because again, Tea Party, you know, after 8 years of Obama, who they threw up in front, they didn't throw up like racial diversity, they threw up a racist who wanted to separate the races.
But they never even pursued racial diversity in their party. It's
No,
like,
they've never.
I remember some conversation about like the flaws in the Republican Party and how they should do something about it, and then nothing happened. And it got worse. And I guess I'm just wondering, are they going to do the same thing again in the wake of Trump and how his cult like bubbled up under the Republican Party and made it explode? Are they going to be like, all right, Republican Party needs to fucking change. We need to do some blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to be back here 8 years later, and they're going to be even worse.
Yeah.
Or is there some hope that somehow they recalibrate? Because when you look at like a QAnon lady like fucking Marjorie, you know, gaining political power, my fear is that like the crazy elements are just going to keep getting stronger and more votes.
And that's the problem. They are way more willing to court the crazy than to actually, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's her full name.
Taylor, that's what it was.
But yeah, they're more willing to court the crazy, or at least dangle that they're cool with the crazy, if not openly. Like a lot of them have gone to being just openly courting, like Cruz and Hawley and all of them. But they're willing to leave themselves open, you know, to like the support. It's like someone like Mitch McConnell, he ain't gonna say yeah, but he ain't gonna say no either. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of them like to do. Like I ain't saying that these people like are good, but I ain't gonna say they bad either. You know, I'm not gonna come out and denounce because even when you look at the whole thing, looking back when Mitch made his like fucking, you know, speech, he denounced what Trump did, but I don't, at least maybe I missed it, but I don't recall him denouncing the people who did it.
I don't recall that. And even the denouncement of Trump felt kind of weak.
Exactly.
Which again, that's why I said if you look at Mitch, it feels like he's kind of trying to like feel out what the best strategical move
I ain't
is.
gonna say this is right, but I ain't gonna say it's wrong either. Like they don't.
You've been hearing these like discussions that like Mitch is somewhat interested in, ousting Trump from the political party. Essentially, it's like only because you now are to a point where he's not as convenient as he used to be, right?
But here's the thing. We're hearing rumors and we're hearing rumbles. We don't have nobody none of them like publicly coming out, with the exception of maybe one or two, and saying he needs to go.
Right. Because again, I don't think it's clear to them what the advantageous political move is going to be yet. So they're not really willing to. As cynical as it is, I think that's their calculation for everything. What's going to solidify as much political power for me as possible? If it's kicking Trump out, then I'll do that. If it's, sucking his dick so I can get his base to love me, I'll do that. And they're kind of like in this weird middle ground where they're still trying to feel out like which way is going to make me the winner here. Nothing to do with like, helping the American people. It's just like,
yeah. No,
I just don't want to have one of these conversations get like, yeah, the Republican Party needs to change. We need to, do legislation that helps people of color and like invite them and recruit them more into like, nah, 8 years from now, your rallies are going to be
they're going to get one or two
white,
more like people of color. But they're going to recruit hardliners. They don't want to recruit anybody, who's going to attract large groups of people of color, because they need you to still, be like, Rick Scott. They need you to be like, what's the name of the guy who just passed because of COVID? Herman Cain. They need you on that level. You can't be reasonable. You have to like be ridiculous like them. So that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you can show a couple of black faces. That ain't gonna help, because if those black faces are talking that bullshit, they're not gonna attract most. Like, you're not gonna pull anybody like who's more liberal minded, or you're not gonna pull people who are more reasonable.
How do you think they can approach, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which is a huge healthcare issue and a huge economic issue. Do you think they should still push for, things like student loan forgiveness in general? Some of the things liberal people have been wanting for years, especially more in recent years with people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and all that. Given, the state that we're in, do you think we should still push for that shit right now as well? And do you think Biden will or should? I don't know.
Well, he's shown that. I mean, you've heard about the $50,000 thing, right?
Not certain.
So one of his pushes is to eliminate at least up to $50,000 of debt from student loans.
Okay. I have to read into the particulars, but no, I'm not.
So that's one thing. So it is funny because as I think about it, it's like everything that Biden's doing, like I appreciate, but I also laugh because it's just like he's trying to like dip the toe in the water, like as far as he can with it. Like it's not full, debt relief, like the more progressive people are asking, but it's a step forward,
I mean, it would be pretty substantial.
Yeah, that would clear like a lot of debt from a lot of people, like making it more reasonable to manage.
Like I was surprised when you said that number.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I said I have to read the petitions. I'm like, no, this must have some sort of limited application. There's no way. But
yeah, that's a considerable amount of debt. Or it's like, with this new package, everybody wants $2,000 a month, $2,000, for people. but he's doing the 1400 to try to see if that'll slide through a little bit better. You know, it's not Medicare for all, but it's the public option. It's like he's you know, dipping that toe in the water in each of these things, because he's trying to get something done. And I admire that. It would be nice if we could push all the way, definitely. But again, considering who we have to work with on this, and you know, we don't have 60 Democratic people to ensure that it can't be, you know, somebody can't try to fucking, you know, filibuster it or, you know, challenge it. So you kind of had, you know, he's kind of throwing out stuff that's like, you know, maybe you can swallow this a little bit better, maybe, please, which is sad.
I don't know that he should want to try to get all the way there. I think the point of my question is like, given that we're already in such a rough spot economically, socially, medically.
No, I'm not saying he should. I'm answering to the question like you saying how like, you know, Bernie and them should keep pushing. Yeah, you should keep pushing. I think everybody should keep pushing the idea, but don't be. I guess what I'm saying is, you know, with what he's doing, don't be so close-minded to a step forward.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I do see some pushing there. And I do think it should happen, but I'm like, you know, even though I just said they should be kind of bold, and even though I am pretty liberal and do think some of that shit should happen, I'm like, I don't know, Doug. We're kind of on a, you know, cracking ice under our feet. I don't know how much we can do that fast, given our current situation. Yet at the same time, I think it's important that we not be content with just fixing everything, but taking some kind of progressive step further. If that's possible, I think we should definitely do that. God, it's such a fucking weird position to be throwing a new president into with like so many things going. I mean, you know, presidents deal with bullshit all the time, but it is fucking crazy.
Yeah, and this man's 78. Y'all keep in mind. He don't need his stress.
I would see somebody like a little bit of complaints from somebody. I'm like, bruh. Like literally, it was like the day before he was even sworn in. Like he wasn't even literally the president yet, and people were like getting on his case. Like, bruh, can he sit down? Can he become the president first?
Yeah, I remember people complaining. Oh, he did. Where's my check? Shit like that. Like, can he at least get in office to do something?
Y'all know the inauguration. You know what the inauguration is for, right? That's when he officially becomes the president. He's not the president. He can't just start signing all these orders before he even has that. So, I don't know. Hopefully, we can go beyond returning to normalcy. But maybe it's a bit cynical. But I'm like, yeah, maybe also temper the expectations. But apparently, he's bolder than me if he's talking about $50,000 forgiveness. He's a liberal hippie, socialist scumbag.
Yeah, it's gonna be like fucking. And we have to remember too, because you're gonna get a lot of like blowback from the left. That's just gonna like throw up their hands and scream and bloody murder and all that. Like I've already seen people like stop saying that. We gotta be patient and like, oh my God, shut up. Like, come on.
Which is sad because I've been impressed by like just the way they talk about helping everybody as far as equity, for instance. So when they're talking about like the vaccine rollout, I was hearing this discussion from them. It's like, well, what you got to consider is that, not all neighborhoods have access to like, a pharmacy like that. So they might have to travel and shit like that. I was listening to Buttigieg earlier talk about transportation. And he's like, if you have enough money to afford your own car, your travel situation is different than somebody who has to take public transportation, all this stuff. Like, they're really fucking thoughtful about a lot of this shit. In a way that I would think should make liberals all happy, because they're talking so much about, talking and thinking so much about equity and how to handle different social groups, different demographics.
But see, here's the counter. The counter is there's already articles talking about what they're doing is not enough. His plan's not enough. The idea of getting out 100 million vaccines within the first 100 days, that's not enough. It's like nothing's enough. Nothing.
Some of that is just like literal physical challenges of me. Like, yeah, manufacturing, distributing. That's all hard. I don't know.
It's not enough.
I've been impressed. Obviously, it's only been like a couple of days, so for the most part, I was gonna say a lot of it's talk. To be fair, Biden has also signed a bunch of executive orders, so it's not all just talk.
It's not enough.
We'll see. I said some time back that when Biden does take office, I hope this was before the riot, too, the attack on the Capitol. I was like, y'all gonna have to temper your expectations. It's like boiling water, right? Like, just because you take it off the stove doesn't mean it's not hot anymore all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, the political temperature.
There's so much stuff
in the country
you gotta fix, and it's like, I understand first 100 days is important and all that, but this ain't even like a normal president. This pandemic has kind of fucked things up. Like, God, can he fucking... Again, this man's 78. He ain't gonna make it.
I hate how much he's already
say that. He ain't gonna make it.
Like, look how much he's already like focusing on knocking out. Like, trying to stop the family separation, travel differences, mask mandates. Like, this was all in like what 24, 36 hours or something like that. Like, bruh.
And they said he has like another 13 or so tomorrow. Well, I say tomorrow, it being Sunday night that we started recording. But like, yeah, his first Monday as president, he's supposed to do like 13 more or something like that.
I remember like that first day or so, I felt bad about myself. It's like, this motherfucker has done more work than I have all week. Like, the day following his inauguration.
Day of his inauguration, shit.
Yeah. It's like, not just him, his whole, team is coming in and doing shit. I'm like, I don't know what you got.
I think he still don't have his full cabinet to initiate things. They're still trying to get those people in. He's just gotten a couple of people confirmed. Like,
look, I say this as somebody, you go back, if you listen to our podcast, during the Democratic primaries, I didn't hate the motherfucker, but I just didn't really care about him that much. I'm like, hey, I am so far impressed, I guess, which again, to your point earlier, the bar is pretty low, but still, it's something. I give him like some credit for these first few days. I don't think that's unfair or unreasonable. Hold him to account, moving forward, but so far, so not disastrous.
Again, it's not enough. That's going to be the theme. It's for a good while. And I think that's the thing. He's probably not going to get any respite from either side, but in particular, especially from the left, until something, I guess, more, I won't say more substantial, but something more grand comes through. You know what I mean?
So can you imagine any situation in which it's not enough won't be the response? Like, what would he have to do in your mind to kind of get around that?
He has to get all the things that people think are the most important, which right now, like, he's already like signed on the federal. He did the executive order for the $15 federal wage raise thing.
Even
So
that
hopefully,
shit was kind of.
so hopefully that will stick and that will happen and that will be executed. Cool. All right, that's one. You got the student debt thing. Abolish all student debt. Okay. Good luck on that. Again, I'm, admired that he's ambitious enough to say $50,000. Even at that, like that's ambitious to me. Considering the climate that we're in. Of course, Medicare for all. We know where that's going. We know how that. Yeah. God bless you, because you're gonna have to convince enough people that the public option is like reasonable to vote for. Like so, like, and what was the other thing that like the other quote unquote Bernie tenant? $15
Fuck business.
Yeah, well, $15 student debt, Medicare for all. I feel like there was a fourth pillar that I'm missing, but
I don't know. Although I don't know
at
that it was
least
just student debt. I think it was probably also the cost of education generally. But
oh yeah, free education. Thank you. Which, to be quite honest, a lot of states have been working on anyway. I mean, at least for community college, you can go to college for free in a lot of places. But no, he needs to federal mandate that too. So, boom, he has to hit those four pillars for like people to shut up, which is to say, people aren't going to ever shut up and be satisfied.
oh, of course, police reform, prison reform.
Oh yeah, you got to defund the police. Yeah,
Make marijuana legal.
The marijuana thing is kind of a layup. At least
fair, but
at least on paper, it should be a layup.
As you're saying all this shit, it's like not only is he taking up the presidency following Trump during a pandemic, but just given all the other shit that's wrong with America as far as our healthcare, education, prison, and police systems, it's like I would wish just. You want to talk about morbid? You said he's not going to make it. I'd argue if he was going to make it, the job's probably going to stop that from happening. Just the stress of all that shit.
Yeah. No, that's why I said I don't think he's going to make it. And I'm not saying he's going to die. I'm not,
No.
But I'm just saying, like, he at some point he's going to just tap out. He's going to Lyndon Johnson it. Lyndon Johnson is probably the best comparison. When Lyndon Johnson took over, it was right after Kennedy got assassinated, and then he I think he won one term, and in his term Lyndon Johnson got the Civil Rights Act passed and a bunch of other stuff, but it was like pulling fucking teeth for him to get all of this shit, because I think he's the one with the 100 points of light thing, and 1,000 points of light. No, that's Bush. What was the Lyndon Johnson thing called? Shit. Now I got to look it up. Anyway, he had all these like big ideas and things. The Great Society. That's what it was. He wanted to. His initiative was the Great Society. Improve privacy stuff, civil rights, the war on poverty, education, health. He was pretty much all the stuff that we're talking about with Biden. That was what Lyndon Johnson was kind of trying to do back then. And he got, some stuff passed, again, the Civil Rights Act, and, a lot of programs put into the place. But by the end of his fucking term, he got on TV and told people I'm not running for president again. I'm done. I'm out because they tapped him out. They fucking tapped him out. And I think that's what's going to happen to Biden. At some point, they're going to tap him out. Just a lot earlier than Johnson. Like at least Johnson made it to the like fucking end of his like, you know, first full term, his first official term. He ain't gonna make it. He ain't gonna do that.
I guess we'll see how much we can get out of him. We're back in. I guess we're. One of the orders was to get back in the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, he just did that. So yeah, that's nice.
And I bring that up to say, like, one of my last questions.
You just reminded me another thing. He got to deal with climate control. Oh God.
I mean, I guess we always had to, but I guess it was different when you had a president like Trump who didn't give a shit. And you know, that's one of my last questions, I guess, is do you think Biden will be able to, if not fix, at least revamp some of our image abroad, like globally? Or is that just kind of fucked, like, for a long time, no matter what?
It's kind of a yes or no answer. And I'll attack the no first. No, we won't attain the status that we have had as far as like, you know, the way the world hasn't really necessarily always viewed us positively, but they kind of viewed us with the, you know, a certain type of respect because of our, you know, status. I don't think that I think the luster of being, well, this is the United States, you know, one of the largest economies in the world, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that really, really matters outside of like business benefits. So yeah, nah. It's gonna be harder. Like, we're getting back into the Paris Agreement. We're not gonna have. I don't think like it's gonna be as easy to get our position of influence that we had for a while. Economic markets, you know, with the whole mess with China that we had, that's going to be hard to get back. So I think people are going to think better of us, and I think people are going to be more willing to give us some of the benefit of doubt back. But I think Trump has left us in the state of a world where, guess what? The world continued. Not only did the world continue on, but the world actually succeeded and exceeded beyond us in certain ways without us being on board with the agenda. Look at the handling. The pandemic is the perfect example of that. Everybody else handled it much better. They coordinated much better. What did we do? We was like, fuck you. We're going to do what we want, how we want. And it's still a fucking disaster. You have places in the world where they're completely COVID free, or where it's at such a minimum that kids are back in school. You know, certain businesses are able to function properly, all that shit, you know. If they have to go into lockdown like they just did in in England, everybody's adhering to it and they're following the rules, you know, because they know that they'll get arrested or whatever, in trouble. Everybody's doing what they need to do, what's necessary to get through this shit in other places, and they're working together with it while we're on the outside. And you know what? Trump has created a world where America's importance isn't what it used to be, and it may never be that way to the rest of the world.
Part of the reason I was watching the news, and somebody, I don't know where they were pulling this phrase from, but they said, as far as the rest of the world is looking at us, America has a new president, but not a new country. And, that made me think like, yeah, everybody celebrated Biden winning. He's like, yeah, he beat him by like 7 or whatever the number of millions of people. But it's like, also a lot of motherfuckers voted for Trump.
Exactly.
Like a lot. And that shouldn't be ignored. I was thinking this before the fucking riot on the Capitol. Like, I think it's clear to the rest of the world that like we managed to get this new administration in, but we have serious fucking problems. And if I'm like another world leader, I'm looking at America like, okay, it's glad that you have some stability coming back, but how can I trust you not to end up with a new Trump in 4 years?
Right.
So I worry about the level of damage he's done, not just because of the last 4 years, but the consequences it could have to what people think in the future. It's like, all right, there's a new election. Is every election from now on, every other world leader going to be like, fuck, is the psycho going to win? Is there going to be a new psycho every 4 years? Like, it's not a good position to be in. Which again is another heavy thing to put in Biden's shoulders. But get to work.
Yeah.
What if he just like tapped out tomorrow? Like, never mind, you do it, Kamala, and just like went home.
No, he has to like, I think 2 years in a day is the whole thing that people are saying, like for him to like make it like so where they can't do anything to get rid of her. I forget what it is exactly.
I like to hope he'll be fine the whole time through, but yeah.
Just make it your 2 years in a day, bro, and then go sit down. Seriously, like
it's just got a.
I'm sure, like for him, he would like
this calculation.
I'm sure for him, he wants to like at least do the full term, and then probably pass off the reins, and hopefully, like hope the country will do the right thing and vote for the Kamala. But yeah. I don't know if he should trust us that much, to be quite honest, either. I really feel like for the benefit, like of the political future for the Democratic Party and for the country, he would probably be better off giving her the job so that at least you can test the waters and see how people receive her. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if she, it's a weird conversation, but I guess since we're here, if she was to become the president during his term, at a decent point during his term, then she would be the incumbent president next time, and that would give her a bit of an advantage.
Well, technically, not technically. Because remember, since he would hand it off to her, she would be able to run twice because she was never elected president.
All right, maybe I shouldn't have used that term quite that way, but I just meant like there is a political advantage to being the one already there in that people are kind of used to you.
Yeah.
The other motherfucker is the one coming to fight the champion on their home turf. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that
could be a strategic advantage to make her be the president, if only to get people used to the idea that she is the president and that her being president didn't kill them.
Exactly. You have to like, because everybody, yeah, we proved that the black man could be president, but it was rough getting it through there. Now you got to like try to like prove that the black woman could be president, and like that's two things that America's not used to.
It would be a hell of a thing.
It's not even that. It's like not only is she black, but she's a woman, but she's also the first like immigrant child to hold the office if she became president, and then she also be the first, like, Asian descent president as well because of her mom. Yeah. Even like to like minute levels, like we ain't never have a president who like went to a black college, but she would be it. Howard University. Like,
even you to say like, I think there'd be serious backlash to all of that.
Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like she got a lot of like, things like that would piss a lot of people off, be it big or small.
Sure. And I think even Biden, like, if it was, not even if it was clear, like, if it seemed like Biden did that move just to, for the political reason I was just describing, like, that's not necessarily a good look for her either. That might hurt in some ways. It'd be like, oh, so you were just sneaking the black girl into office. Fuck this.
But, it could be because that's the way people would think. And I know it's just funny because now I feel bad for saying that because that's seeding, like, even though I doubt some right wing nut is going to listen to this, that would help, like, build that conspiracy theory or to somebody. But, it would mainly, to me, be because he's tired and he's old. But, yeah, people will look at that and be like, oh, yeah, you're trying to sneak in another one and all this on us. And, yeah, oh, God, politics.
It was all a plot to get a black woman president.
All right.
And, I mean, the way the news covers it, first black, first woman, first Asian, first. Like, yeah, that doesn't help either. Yeah, at least with that kind of thing. I can easily see them taking all that media coverage and the way people obsess over that and be like, see, it's all get fucking woke points and all this shit. I don't know. God, it's going to be an interesting 4 years if the planet survives. It's morbid. But like I said, and on a happy note, I do think good things are happening. People are actually doing their jobs. People actually smile when they see the press secretary, and like the press secretary doesn't, attack the press and talk a bunch of bullshit. She's just like, yeah, here's some facts. Here's what we're working on. Blah blah blah.
It's nice, but it also makes my head hurt. How people were like, wow, she actually answered questions and didn't lie. Like,
she didn't yell at us
again. We're given fucking gold stars for doing the right thing. Jesus Christ! Oh my God, that's how low we sunk, y'all. That's how low we fucking sunk.
You got the Fauci like, we could talk about science again. Like, oh my God.
Right. Like,
how bad did it
as
get?
if science was, it feels like we just came out the dark ages where like, the church banned and abolished like sciences and all that. Like we were back to the Salem witch trials, burning people for speaking that not mumbo jumbo.
I mean, it reminds me a bit of like, I grew up in Florida. We would have the hurricanes, it would knock out the power, water, all that shit. No internet. Once for like a couple weeks. That happened to me more than once. But all of a sudden you get all the power and electricity and water, internet back. It's like, yeah, things aren't shitty anymore. I can like flush like I can see in the dark because there's lights now. I can talk to the world. I can make phone calls. All the shit that I could have done like just a couple weeks prior to that are now suddenly magical because I hadn't been doing them for like the last couple of weeks.
It's just, and this is why I know people hate the idea of giving patience to Joe Biden and everything, but yeah, you know how far we've sunk. Like the whole
people are being hired to jobs that actually know how to do those jobs,
right?
And are not just like random friends of the president.
Was fucked up about it, and got to fix the fucked up shit. Like Who knows what Ben Carson did to housing and urban development?
Or what Betsy did to, it's like,
Exactly, like the education department, like
even just that, just having to fire a bunch of people who were just political friends or whatever of Trump's, who didn't have any expertise, who were fucking shit up, fire them and hire new staff in all these areas in government. Like, even that alone. Because usually, a president comes in, obviously they're going to hire their own people or whatever, but like, you at least trusted there was some sort of stable infrastructure of people around when you come in. Some of those motherfuckers you could just keep. I'm sure Biden just walking around like, oh, fired. Yeah, I remember you, motherfucker, fired.
Yeah.
I know I joke about cardiac 2020, but like, now that I look at what Biden has to go through, I'm like, yeah, that probably wasn't the year to make that joke. Maybe 2024 after some of that shit's fixed.
I don't even think 2024 is going to be a good year to run. Like, you might want to give yourself until, well, one, you're not going to be old enough, but
what?
You have to be a certain age to be president, sir.
Yeah, 30.
No, it's 30.
I'm changing. 30.
Let me see.
It's 30.
No, it's, I want to say it's at least 35. Yep. Had to be at least 35 and be a resident.
We're changing it.
So, yeah. Nah.
We're changing it. I think 35 is an odd number, and I like even numbers, so we're making it 30.
Sorry, you can't run. 2028. And even then, I would be cautious. I feel like 2042 might be the best year.
Look, by that point, either we've created like a decent society or we're like living in Mad Max or some shit. Like,
exactly. That's why I say
it's one or the other.
Give yourself some time to like fucking let things settle. Like, again, we gotta get it. Like, we gotta get some more firsts in there before they bring back another black man. Come on, bro. Yeah, because we got to get them used to like, hey, a president should be different because we had so many different presidents. So we need a woman president. We need a Hispanic president. We're gonna need an Asian president. We're gonna need an openly homosexual president. We're gonna need
guys. I'm shaking my head not because I don't want that shit. Just
then we're gonna need a transition, because people, as soon as you got to get the first one in to get the fucking, like with Obama, you got to get the first one in to get the like horribleness out. Like, that first one has to take the hit, and then once we've run through all the first, like, nobody can say anything anymore. It's like, okay, we've had all these people. It wasn't horrible, so just vote. God damn it.
That's a lot of motherfuckers to wait on. I only have this one lifetime.
I mean, to be fair, Biden's doing this, share though, because you have the first black Secretary of Defense now. You're going to have like the first Hispanic head of a cabinet department. I forget what cabinet he's going to be head of, but he's going to be first. But you're going to have that. You have like some first female ambassadors and things like that in certain areas. You have your first, first openly gay cabinet member, maybe. I don't know, probably. In this country. You have the first transgender member coming in.
Do we?
Yeah. You didn't know that? He's appointed. God, now I'm trying to find out what position.
Let me see. And I looked at the list of appointees.
Rachel Levine, she's picked as the assistant health secretary. So she's going to be like the first transgender person who's going to be a part of the leadership of the The health secretary.
Rachel Levine.
Yep.
I love how I look her up and I just like go to news on the first article. Republican lawmaker apologizes after mocking Biden's trans health nominee. Like,
of course.
Just everything.
That's what I'm saying. You got to get these first out of their system, so these motherfuckers who like are so obstinate and like fucking opposed to change, you know, to get that shit out their system. Sadly.
To be fair, I don't know exactly what he was mocking her for, but I can assume. And
it's either Holly or Cruz. I'm just gonna always say it's Holly or Cruz, or it's Jordan, or it's McCarthy.
No, it's a guy named Jeff Pyle.
Oh yeah, I've heard that name before. It makes sense.
But like, I just say that to say like, again, their whole brand is essentially to be an asshole. No other purpose in life.
Yeah, I believe Jeff Powell is one of those people who were openly trying to get Pennsylvania to not certify. So yeah, he's an ass. He's a known ass.
But all right. So much going on.
So yeah, no, you need to get these first in like places so people will sadly like open their fucking minds and realize, hey, these people aren't going to ruin your life by existing and doing jobs.
Heaven forbid they might actually do those jobs.
Or do it well, in fact. Gee.
I mean, that's been my... You look at Trump, just for example, during the whole... Like when he suddenly came out, it's like, we should do $2,000. I'm like, this motherfucker's been on a golf course not saying shit for months, and all of a sudden, he feels like pretending to do something. And the number of people here just don't do jobs. It's wild.
Yeah. And now we're going to have people who are going to be actually doing work. God. What's that going to be like?
Boring. How are we going to survive on Twitter without Trump to entertain? I saw some article the other day that was like apparently about Biden's watch, and I'm like,
yeah, there's like that's the one thing that I think we forgot. We've got the Peloton gate. That's just he had a controversy before he was president because of his Peloton. You heard about that, right?
Some vague thing about the security issues of his Peloton.
Yes,
I'm like,
it's a problem for him to have a Peloton because it may be a security risk, and
which even then it was like, they'll just make some changes and it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that serious.
I didn't read the article about the watch, but apparently it's like, is Biden wearing a Rolex? I'm like, oh my God. Please, not this shit. Give us a week or something before you start on this. Fucking Christ. But you know what? Hey, it's Obama's tan suit all over again. Obama's tan suit, Biden's Rolex.
Yeah, exactly. We gotta go there. But I guess it's good that we have normal controversies now. I don't know.
It's a sign the times are coming back.
Right. This is normalcy. Jesus Christ. Just help me. All right. Is there anything else that we may have missed or need to cover? I mean, we still got a long haul to go with all these nominations, all these votes that are coming. I don't know. Did we miss anything else in this weird month that we've been on?
Well, it's not just the case that Trump was kicked off social media, but also banks are like, fuck you.
Oh, yeah. Deutsche Bank said, nope, we will not give you any more credit.
All right. So I think because I was interested in talking about social media in general, I focused on that, but there's a lot of financial legal shit coming up his ass now, too.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that's going to affect his kids, but we'll see where that goes as well, because there are people legally coming after him. Obviously, of course, with the impeachment shit as well. Other than that, I think we could just wait and see. I think that was the major shit.
Oh, there you go. I'm sure. Well, here's the thing. As time goes on, the major shit will be more of the normal major shit. So hopefully this will be. By the way, keep in mind that they're keeping the National Guard in DC until, for the foreseeable future, I think. 'Cause what's coming up? Oh my god, I'm not sure what's coming up or why, but they, just for safety reasons, because God only knows what people will do. But it's sad that these people got to be on duty and away from their lives because of idiots. Like, it's pretty sad. But I mean, as time goes on and we move further from the after stench of Donald Trump, yeah, we'll just be talking normal.
Sure.
Hygiene.
I know it's not instantaneous, but the vaccines are rolling out, and if you look back to just like several months ago, like life was seeming pretty rough. But I hope people are feeling hopeful with these vaccines finally getting distributed. Obviously, the people who need it most. I hate to say it, but I should probably be one of the last people to get it because I work from home, relatively young, no known medical conditions. So all the other cool people can get it first. But I don't know exactly what the timeline's looking at. I know they have a lot of work because again, Trump administration fucked up a lot of things. But
the thing is, they didn't really fuck this up. That's one thing you can say they didn't fuck up because they didn't actually have a plan. So hey, how you gonna fuck up? You can't fuck up if you don't have a plan, right? Right?
I might count not doing a job as fucking it up, but fair enough.
You got to throw him a bone. Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm sure he can take a bone in prison.
Oh, he is going to. That man better die before he go step foot anywhere near New York, because he.
I say that to say, like, hopefully there's like some sort of light on the horizon for life. Be able to just go outside. Like, I don't, it's been a long time since you can just go outside, like just go travel, go do something.
Mm-hmm.
So in all this messiness, I hope at least that thing is like a ray of sunshine for everybody.
Yeah, who knows? We might be able to go like do social stuff. So keep that.
Go see your family members, tell them to fuck off, go back home, the old regular shit.
If you're single, you might get a chance to get some now.
I'm sure some people were still doing that, but like, it wasn't responsible.
But now you could do some like without having to worry, at least. There's that.
We can stop fighting over masks. I guess probably that's something to fight about. Like,
yeah. Oh man, I have to tell you a story later, but man, God.
No, I don't know what Marvel's plan is, but can you imagine a life where we're going back to the theater to see Marvel movies again for the next?
Actually, no, I can't because I don't want to in a way because some of those people who go see Marvel movies, I kind of don't want to be around. Sorry. Yeah.
You don't want to be around the people dressing up in costumes and fucking.
Some of them weren't being like actually hygienic to begin with, so yeah. I'm not sure.
I guess I always went like early and not during the opening weekend, so often there just weren't that many people around me. But I get your point.
Yeah, some of them weren't safe even before COVID, so yeah.
Yeah, guys, the world's returning to normal slowly, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Keep walking.
Yeah, it's there. It's there. All right. Um, we'll forego the book suggestions and stuff like that. Like, y'all need to relax. We've been recording for damn near 4 hours, and I'm sure you're tired now. So reading is the last thing you want to do.
Like that
Just
WandaVision.
yeah, I was going to say, just go watch some good TV. Watch all the shows on Disney Plus, the Amazon shows. Look for the movie of the week on Netflix. Flicks, as they're doing one new movie a week, at least.
Jesus.
Yeah, they're coming out with 70 new movies for the whole year, and they're doing one a week.
Yeah, I saw. I was like, God, I didn't know what to think of that, but it's something.
Yeah, so I mean, we can still watch movies. Hey, get HBO Max, watch the little things this week. You know, King Kong's coming. King Kong versus Godzilla is coming soon. Uh, you have stuff to look forward to. Just can't go outside and do it. That's all. Sorry. Anyway, all right.
So
Yes, hopefully, fingers crossed. Knock on wood. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. I guess we'll see you next time on The Reason Reborn. Peace.